The broadcast is live.
So whoever was such a good person that they got the white Christmas over here, you need to be naughty next year because it's freaking cold in here.
What's funny is here it was 60 degrees last night and raining. I woke up this morning and was shocked to see all the snow in my front lawn was gone.
It always warms up before a big snow. I tell people this. Some people are on board. Some people look like I'm nuts. But yeah, you'll get some warm weather. And that's how you know if you're in the middle of winter and you get rid of the snow and it warms up again, you got another one coming. Every time.
Yeah. I was listening to the weather last night, man. It was nasty.
Yeah. I mean, the wind was wicked.
Yeah, just the ice and the whatever was falling down. It sounded pretty harsh.
Okay. Well, I want to be the guy that, like, I am the Grinch now, right? So as soon as we're done with this broadcast, the tree's coming down at my house. You know what I mean? It's down. It's going to be packed up. It's over with. So hopefully, did you guys have a good Christmas?
Had a good Christmas.
Yeah.
Mine just ended. So my family just walked out the door half an hour ago.
There you go.
Nice.
We wore our masks to be safe.
I haven't actually felt too well today, so not really.
Food.
No, what food? Actually, made my first batch of chili in the Instapot, and other than it being a little on the salty side, it's pretty good.
See, I never add salt to anything. I don't put salt in it.
I cut down on the amount of salt that the recipe called for. It's just I put in too much taco sauce, which I could taste, but it wasn't. It didn't make a huge effect. But whatever reason, it just turned out a little too salty.
My guess,
I've never put salt or sugar in my chili.
I think I may have to cut it with a little bit of sugar to balance it out.
Yeah,
just a tiny bit.
I'm also thinking that you have an Instapot. You're getting food that's cooked the right way, and your body's like, "What the hell?" Because Hello, how was your Christmas?
I ate a lot.
Me too. We had lasagna.
Oh,
plus lots of other stuff.
Oh, how long does it take to drive to New York from here? We'll be right over.
It's good stuff.
Yes.
Well, we got people rolling in. What we got here? We have the Popes in here. I will double Grinch you. No tree, no light. Traditional Christmas chili, Scott? Was this your traditional Christmas chili?
I can't really call it traditional yet because it's the first time I made it. So
after I made chili for Thanksgiving, he was like,
I'm actually going to try your recipe too and see how that turns out.
Hey, fellas, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Stay puff.
Stay puff.
Yeah. So just kind of moving right along, I think I put the wrong title on because apparently I was the only one that made the mistake of watching Wonder Woman 84, 1984.
How big of a how long have you been doing the show with us? You've never noticed we're not mainstream geeks like that? And we've watched Wonder Woman on the first day? I still haven't even bothered to watch the first Wonder Woman movie. So.
I try to throw a bone to the kids that might pop in. You know what I'm saying? I try to cover a little bit of everybody every now and then when I'm worried about it. You know what I mean? It's not very often.
Yeah, I only watch the movies like 20 years after they come out now. Like last year, I finally saw the American Ninja movies and Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man for the first time.
Paolo's one of those guys who goes, you know what's a good movie? Goodfellas. Have you seen that?
They have talkies now, Paolo.
Yeah, and this year I saw the Princess Bride for the first time.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Nice, Princess Bride. I dig that.
Have you heard about it?
I've heard a little bit about it.
Yeah. I never liked the movie because I read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's one of the cases of the book's better than the movie. So everybody who saw the movie loved it, but I saw it and went, it's not as good as the book. But I haven't, seen the movie nor read the book in 30 years.
Well, if Columbo is not reading me the book, I don't want to read the book. I'm not doing it.
Have you seen the YouTube video where they have different celebrities that are reenacting the movie? That's actually really good.
Yeah, I think it's Entertainment Weekly or somebody that's pulling those people together. I mean, there's an actual company that's doing it. But the Scott Pilgrim one, where they brought back people, was actually good. They got Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It seems like I watched the other ones. But there's more Goonies. They brought a lot of the Goonies back, and that was kind of fun. But I watched a few of those. But we were talking about Mandalorian. We were talking about Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? And I'm like, we got a mix of who's watched what and who's like, no.
Wonder Woman. Why would I watch that?
But like I said before, I'm gonna get this off my chest so we can move on and I can just shut up and we can have fun. I'm the Grinch tonight, man. But
here's the disclaimer.
Actually, we can all be the Grinch. Let me try something here.
Yeah, go for it, man.
You're a mean one.
But Frank Miller's the spirit.
Okay, I'm the Grinch too now.
Space. All of those I will watch before Wonder Woman 1984 again. Ever. I mean, I'm fresh off of watching this like an hour ago, and I'm like, it felt like it took 6 hours to watch this movie, and it was very bad. But you want to hear my favorite scene that was bad?
Sure.
I mean, it's going to be a spoiler here.
We're going to hear it anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, do you remember that great scene in Plan 9 from Outer Space where Lugosi, like, he went for it. He got in the pond and he got the stuffed octopus and he wrestled with it.
Oh yeah, the scene in Ed Wood where they were filming that scene.
Yeah,
is amazing.
Martin
Lando should have won every damn award there was just for him reenacting that scene.
Well, that scene
was hysterical.
That scene beats everything they did in Wonder Woman 84. Okay. So they're out in the middle of the desert. I think they end up in the Mideast somehow, right? I'm not even sure how to tell you what's going on here, right? And they show it. They keep showing you the land, and Wonder Woman's losing her powers because she made a wish. This whole movie is about Donald Trump having the gift of the Magi and the monkey paw and granting wishes. They turned Maxwell Lord into Donald Trump. So instead of a superhero movie, you get a big political statement about a president in Wonder Woman. Like, wow. What a waste.
That's going to age well.
No other superheroes, no playing around with the DC universe, nothing real interesting, just a big political statement. Anyway, she ends up in Iran, and she's starting to lose her powers, and they keep showing, I guess it's Iran, I don't know where they're in the desert, and they show her on one road, right, and they keep showing the landscape, and there's like 5 or 6 trucks, and they're just like fighting all of a sudden. Wonder Woman's flipping a truck and pushing one, and she's getting shot and bleeding and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they show 3 kids playing in the road with the only building in the desert right beside of the road. They don't hear the cars coming. They don't hear the gunshots. They don't hear the 50 caliber. And Wonder Woman shoots her lasso up, and they're in the desert, and there's nothing for her to grab. And she swings down to save the kids, so she picks up 2 of them. And then all of a sudden she's so weak, she loses her grip on the lasso, and we get a close-up of her falling with the kids, and they're dummies. You see that they're dummies. They're like, she lands and rolls with dummies, and I'm like, I want to see the damn octopus fight in Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Did she fall into a Sarlacc pit?
I don't know, but somehow she landed right beside of the building again to tell the kids to run off with their parents. Only building out in the desert, and they just happened to be playing in the road at the time. The whole thing is cheesy like that.
Did you say it in English?
Get me outraged because I just don't care about it.
Right.
But did you say it in English? 2 kids in the middle of the desert.
You know what? I think she did. I didn't think about that. Everybody was speaking English. Now that I think about it,
right.
They had Babelfish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got one person out there.
If you were falling asleep, how did you not? If you fell asleep, how did you know it was too long?
I fell asleep 4 times.
That's the criticism I had of Peter Jackson's King Kong. You could have had a good 30 minutes cut off the beginning of it, and it would have been a better movie.
The beginning and the end, actually. That should have just been Skull Island all the way through with that movie, man.
Well, I say we talk about some comics now because I got 4 good ones this week, and you're boring me to death with this Wonder Woman talk.
I'm telling the story better than the movie did.
No, you're not.
You're not now, evidently.
If you're telling the story better than the movie did, I'm really not watching that movie.
And I'm getting the words right, the name.
I got a comic for you this week, Sleepy, to try out because I liked it. Sleepy, read it to you.
I feel cavernous right now.
Did you get this one, Sleepy? The Picture of Everything Else, issue 1.
I like the cover on that one.
Yeah, the cover's really nice. And I really, it's about Vault Comics. Who does it? It's written by Dan Waters, art and colors by Kishore Mohan, and lettered by Aditya Bidikar. And it's this watercolor style.
Jared, not to interrupt you guys, I've got to take care of some Google stuff. They just alerted me that I got to take care of this stuff or we may get pulled off. I'll be right back.
Okay, you take care of that.
Yeah.
But it takes place, I found out in reading the solicit for the next issue of this one, it takes place at the turn of the 20th century. So I think this is like 1897. And our two main characters are painters who are also thieves in Paris in 1897. And what was interesting about of the two main characters, I'm pretty sure the one guy is gay. But they handled it kind of real subtly because it's Paris in 1897.
Right.
And his painting buddy and fellow thief, I think he's in love with the guy, but that guy is not gay. But the other guy, he's just a jerk, kind of. He's one of these lovable rogues, but you don't want him around. But like I said, it was really well done. Their personalities were well done. And what happens is, and like I said, I liked the interplay and interaction between the two. Is there's some murders going on in Paris, and during their art thievery, they discover that it was the painter who's only known as the Englishman, who was the guy who did the picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh, interesting.
And it turns out he's painting the photos of people. He's painting the pictures of people who are then dying.
Okay.
So, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but then like the two characters interact with this guy, and I really liked the handling of the characters, and I really liked the kind of interplay between them. And there was even one scene where the one gay lead character who goes back to his studio, and just the way they talk about art is interesting too. And the one guy comes over, and you can tell that this second guy or the third guy who comes to visit them, I think he was also gay, and he was trying to pick up the first guy. But the first guy was so in love with the straight guy that he was just like, he wasn't even seeing it. So there's all sorts of subtle stuff going on there too. And then it gets violent. And the next issue, I think some significant things happen that I won't go into. But the next issue takes place 4 years after that, when these two old friends kind of reunite. So we'll see. So like this first one is, I guess it would kind of be an origin issue, except it's not really. It's really about their death. But it's like the first scene is really good too, because they show up at this party with this rich woman there who's like, you two weren't invited. Things tend to disappear when you're around. And like the one guy, the straight guy, who's a real kind of jerk, he's also very bohemian and thinks his life is art and thinks this is all part of his art, this stealing to pay for his art, and he's also the more talented one of the two, to add insult to injury. And then he, like, right in the middle of the party, he steals this small sculpture right off the pedestal in the middle of the party. That's what kind of jerk he is. So it ended up being, I put it on my poll list immediately because I really thought this first issue was well done. And the only sort of problem I had with it was visual, in that sometimes I had a little trouble keeping the characters straight because they're all 25-year-old Frenchmen in 1897, like the 4 or 5 are. So it's like they all, of course, have different clothes and slightly different hairstyles.
Okay.
But they all kind of look, because they're all sort of the general type. There's a couple of times I had to go, oh, that's that one. Oh, that's that one. Oh, that's that one. Because, when you've got so many characters that look similar by their general, especially like they're kind of artistic dandies in 1897. I don't know how much variety there was between looks when you're a dandy artist then. But really, really good the picture of everything else, I have no idea how many issues it's going to be. It's from Vault Comics published it, but I really enjoyed it. So give that, like, I think this is one sleepy reader might like too, because this is kind of up his alley.
They could have a crossover with Just Smith's Wrestle.
There you go. I like the picture of Dorian Graybo Wilde. I've never read the picture of Dorian. I don't think I've ever read any Oscar
Kind of an
Wilde.
interesting twist. I wouldn't expect that. That's kind of neat.
But I like, you know, the French art scene from like 1900 to the war was really interesting period to write things, to the Second War, I should say, was a really interesting period to write things about.
Right.
So
I had to put in a scene that says, "Draw me like one of your French dandies."
that just reminded me, I just saw, I don't know where I read this. I read this on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere. Someone posted a little link to a lawsuit from like 100 years ago or something. By he was either a painter or an illustrator whose wife, who he's getting broken up with, and was suing him for taking pictures of her posing. It was like, and I didn't know this was a common thing back when illustrators in the beginning of the 20th century were superstars. Mm-hmm. They of course had models all the time, right. And their wives often modeled for them nude, but they didn't like them taking snapshots of them. They always referred them as snapshots too, and not photographs. It was like, for some reason it was crossing a line to take a picture, a photograph of your nude wife. I just never heard that before.
I knew his reaction was going to be like, "What the hell are they talking about?"
He doesn't know what's going on.
That's fine.
Google isn't cutting you off, Tim?
So far, so good. They're trying to get me to do a lot of stuff now. It's like, hey, we got his attention. Let's threaten him with his stream.
Are they trying to get you to, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Answer a bunch of questions to make sure it's you.
Yep.
That happens sometimes.
Through 2 email accounts, through verify 34 passwords,
right,
and update this and let's verify that. And it took for people who don't know, it took 20 minutes to get the stream rolling, just to get everybody on here. It's like they got me as soon as they got on here. So I was locked out of all my accounts to start with.
Pope Service the First says, "Try and find the Red Sea cover, if you find it." Yeah, I think there were 3 covers there, and I liked this one the best. I can't remember what the other 2. One was like a close up of some object, and I can't remember what the third was. And he also says all 3 guys looked a little the same. I think there were actually 4 guys who looked a little the same. But yeah, that was the one thing I said was a little. The Englishman looked quite different from him. He was the guy who was painting the picture of Dorian Gray and stuff. But I really this may have been the first issue that grabbed me the most in a little while. So
that's good. What was the title of it again?
The Picture of Everything Else.
Okay.
Issue 1. And in this cover, you can't really see it there. What he's doing is he's got a bloody canvas and a razor. So he's obviously painting with blood. And there's big bloody fingers reaching out around the canvas. That's what those strange sausage-shaped things there, right, in that little picture. They're bloody fingers coming out. But yeah, really good. Matter of fact, I really enjoyed all 4 issues this month. This week. Kind of equal. The next one, Outcast issue 47. And this was just I enjoyed this issue more than ones recently because it's wrapping up with issue 48. But the visual story of this one was just so good. Started out with a couple of big double-page spreads that were cool. And just the way he was telling the story of a big spiral of people, the visual way they were telling the story, ending the story of this sort of battle that was going on. But it was all sort of, and then I liked this, how we went from, there was this big battle going on, and then all of a sudden we get these 2 pages. That's an explosion, but they knocked down all the color. And I've kind of never seen that. Usually when there's an explosion, everybody turns up all the color and everything. And then with this one, they just kind of knocked it all down to these really light pastels. And that really had a good effect.
Interesting.
And just the stuff they did here with him trying to pull himself together. I think this was the best drawn and visually. It also could be that so much of the story recently has been sort of day-to-day stuff. A lot of this, there's not spectacular stuff in. So the spectacular stuff that's been happening in this issue really, really worked. And also, this issue got me thinking, too. I didn't look up. I want to look up how many copies are sold of Outcast. Because when you think about, like I said, issue 48 is coming up next, how few full sets of Outcast there will be. I mean, I can't imagine this sells more than 5,000, maybe 10, because it is Kirkman. But I don't think it sells that well. So when all is said and done, there's only going to be a few thousand full sets of Outcast. That just makes me go,
I wonder if this is one of those titles that people wait for the trade.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's just, like I said, there's just not a lot of sets.
Outcast is published here in hardcover format only. So it goes on bookstores.
Right.
You know, during the holiday season, just to kind of interject here, because I'm not going to go on about Wonder Woman 84 anymore. I'm getting a lot of support. People have not finished it. They quit. But I want to put out a support. You know, Christmas time, we got to think about those less fortunate than us. We really do, right? So for all you guys out there whose wives, girlfriends, fiancés are making you pose in matching pajamas, we send you well wishes. I'm sorry that it's going out on the internet. The internet is forever, but hopefully she feeds you well. Okay, carry on.
Don't pajama shame men. That's just wrong, mister.
Just saying.
Just because you sleep in the nude and take all your pictures in your birthday suit doesn't mean everybody has to.
That's a little on the nose, Jared. That's a little on the nose.
Still better than wearing a pink bunny suit.
And then
you look like a pink nightmare.
The Advent calendar issue of Ice Cream Man that's about a young girl and an abortion, and it's just like the horror story. I mean, this was just real life horror going on in Ice Cream Man in this issue. But have you guys read?
Those are words I never thought I'd hear in the same sentence.
Planned Parenthood, the manual. Anyway,
there is actually. Where somewhere at the end here it says donate to Planned Parenthood, then it gives their website. But yeah, this is another horror story, and that's touching, Tim.
He's touched.
If you've never read this is the one I just started. I read some of the trades on Hoopla, which is the library app. Then I kept meaning to check out Ice Cream Man. I kept meaning just put it on my pull list. And I didn't until issue 20, and I wish I had earlier. But this is just a fun book.
This may be the only book that's getting consistent, good hype, like what you're talking about. I'm kind of on board with you. I'm willing to check it out. You know what I mean?
Well, you can pick up any issue and read it because it's really an anthology. There's some continuing stuff with the Ice Cream Man, but not really. It's just each issue is sort of a done-in-one horror story, and it's just done so well. The artist so freaky. I mean, he does some weird things I've noticed him doing some weird things that you just don't. There are certain things that when you're drawing, you don't do because it just looks weird, and he's doing them. And it makes him it's like you're not supposed to draw like individual eyelashes. Because you can't see individual eyelashes, and it makes people look crazy. Well, he's doing it, and it's making people look crazy, but they're supposed to.
What's funny about this? that's funny about that is yesterday when we had dinner with the in-laws and stuff, right, or lunch, whatever you want to call it, the wife had some fake eyelashes on, and for some reason I was looking at them, and I was looking at the cat that they have down at that house. I'm like, I want to put those on the cat. Just put it out there. I wanted to see a cat with eyelashes, you know.
And if you look at any comic book, nobody ever draws individual teeth because it just looks bad. It looks weird, and he's doing it all the time here, and it just looks creepy. I mean, he's doing it on purpose, obviously, to look creepy. Right. And if you look at everybody's always got, like, look at this woman. Everybody's always got their individual teeth drawn.
She looks like she's wearing braces in that panel.
And yeah, that's just nothing you do in comics, and he does it for everyone, and it gives the whole book just weird, otherworldly, creepy vibe.
It'll probably come to me sooner or later, but I want to go with heavy metal or something, or maybe the early '90s. But I saw an artist do the full, draw every teeth, and it does. Let me get you on solo layout.
Yeah, look at these kids here. Each one of them has individual teeth. And that's just something you don't do. I mean, because
there's no definition to their faces. They don't have cheekbones, nothing, and then all of a sudden you get all that detail where it's not supposed to be.
Right, it makes it look extra creepy. Because even photography, you show your teeth. Art, you don't show, because drawing teeth just hardly ever comes out right unless you're doing the scream face. Then you draw teeth, but not even necessarily. Even those guys, they draw the back molars, and then the front ones are kind of one white mass of teeth. Yeah, so I found that interesting, his art style.
That brings up an interesting point. I guess it's maybe just the way my face is made, and I have facial hair, but I don't show a lot of teeth even when I'm smiling. Have you ever seen Mary Lou Retton?
Yeah.
There are saber-toothed tigers that don't show that many teeth. She's not smiling. She's showing, like, dentists shouldn't see that much of people's teeth. It's unnatural. It's like you have receding gums or something. It's weird. So, my rant's over.
Everyone should listen very closely to Jared when he's talking about independent comics and what he tells you to buy.
Yeah.
But as far as Scott's going, Scott, I've noticed since you've been using the Instapot, and I think you're getting I don't know, vitamins or something. I think your diet changed of actual food or something, or whatever you were doing. You're becoming very astute, like the old Scott I knew. This is what I've been waiting on. What I've been waiting on, man.
Astute.
He's saying you've been eating junk food and you've been dumb lately, so.
He's not wrong.
Don't put teeth in my mouth. I didn't say
that.
And yeah, ties into my next comic. There's nothing more creepy than Tim Sale's Joker teeth. He had 1 million teeth. Yeah, that it turns out teeth are really good.
Yeah, that's even worse when they exaggerate the number of teeth for.
And here's something that Todd McFarlane, I heard him say once that I never thought of before, but it's true. He's like, people are usually top teeth people or bottom teeth people. When they open their mouth or smile, you usually see their top or bottom teeth. So always, they never show you both this. So never draw the same, amount of teeth on the top and the bottom. Either hide the bottom teeth and show the top teeth, or vice versa. But you never show the same amount of teeth on the top and the bottom. I was like,
if you open your mouth in a way that shows your entire set of teeth, you're sounding insincere.
Mm-hmm. See, there's things.
Or you're in a Kirby action panel.
There you go.
Or you're drawn by Rob Liefeld.
Screaming faces.
See, this goes in my background. There's reason things creep us out. You got to remember, we're still cavemen, right? Yeah. We have peripheral vision because we would run at night and we were trying to scan, making sure something didn't try to eat us. So teeth, having things like teeth, cannibalism things, there's things that are like, they play into our fight or flight that is ingrained in us if we still have instincts left. So the creepy teeth is a big part of that. When we saw teeth, something was trying to eat us,
I'm not creeped out easily, but you know what creeps me out? Have you ever watched Bob's Burgers?
I know. God, I've tried
Okay.
I tried to watch that.
There's
I'm
a
like,
character on Bob's Burgers, the elder daughter. Her name is Tina, and her voice creeps me out.
It's because it's made by a dude.
Ah, that'll do it. But speaking of Todd McFarlane, here is I liked 312 enough that I'm going to buy at least this story arc because I like the artist on it. What's his name here? Carlo Barberi, and once again he's got this sort of old. We're back to this not so dark Spawn art where you can actually see what's going on in the drawing.
I tell you what, when I see a motorcycle, I think Tim Truman. I always thought Tim Truman in the 80s drew the best motorcycles. That was impressive.
Tim and Truman drew a lot of the best everything.
Now I think they're probably models that use like 3D models for their motorcycles, but there's a couple of nice motorcycles.
Possibly.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, from my
Weird
point
angles.
of view, I'm very fascinated with this mini renaissance of Spawn, all because he put a 10-gallon hat on him. I mean, I'm holding out. Ever since he did that, it's like people who respawn.
Do you think Westerns are coming back? Or?
I don't know.
That's actually what I wanted to point out.
Oh.
Because I looked up the sales numbers on Spawn, and it stunned me. First of all, my LCS had a lot of extra copies of Spawn there, and I was like, "What's going on?" And I didn't ask him at the time, but I was like, "What's going on here? That there's extra copies of Spawn?" Then I was looking. I know Spawn is now returnable, so that comic shops can order it, and then return it if they don't sell it. I didn't know that to begin with. So I went on Comic-Con to look up the sales numbers, and they had estimated sales numbers on the returnable books rather than solid sales numbers. But I couldn't, going by the low estimate, the margin of error between the low estimate they have on Comic-Con and the high estimate is more copies than Spawn was selling last year. I looked up what Spawn was selling last year, and it was around 35,000 copies. The low estimate they have for Spawn this year is 130,000 copies.
That's
a big jump.
Yeah. Holy cow! It's like the 5th or 6th best-selling selling comic. I was like, how did that happen? I think that was all with the attention of Spawn 300.
So
and they now have
we have purple covers, we have gorillas on the covers, and now we have 10-gallon hats. I mean,
they've now got extra covers. They've got 3 or 4 covers an issue, but still they go from 30,000 to 130,000.
Yeah, that's substantial.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
I was just like, holy cow! How can that's a lot.
And another thing, I wonder, this is just shooting off the hip, but I never see trades of Spawn. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I never see trades of Spawn sitting around. I never see them. I wonder if that has a thing about the floppies selling.
Well, I think that also might be the return. You don't see issues of Spawn.
Right.
Until they made it return. Like I said, my comic shop now has 5 or 6 copies of each cover of Spawn on the rack each week. Because they're returnable, and that's why I bought it, because I saw it there.
Yeah, that would be an interesting look at the other numbers on Comic-Con and see if other titles have been made returnable and see what their numbers are like.
That was the only one.
That's the only one. Gotcha.
That I noticed in the top 10. But I was like, to see Spawn back in the top 10 was just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's stunning.
Have you ever looked at sales numbers from like back in the 40s?
Oh, yeah. They're huge.
Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah. Wait a minute! Wasn't McFarlane talking about a new Spawn movie like maybe last year?
Yeah, he
does that like every few years.
Okay.
Well,
I would like to know what happened. I'd like to know what the kismet was that got everybody's attention in this day and age that got put Spawn up there.
First of all, I think it was issue 300. And I think it might be returnability. And let's not forget,
I think,
there are a lot of lapsed Spawn's fans. Spawn, like when did Spawn premiere in 92?
Yeah.
From like 92 to 97, it was the best-selling comics and It was the number. It outsold everything for like 5 years.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say at least the first 50 issues is when Spawn was its hottest, getting it off the rack. I mean,
right.
You know, Capullo came on there. You had, you know, you still had Image still, you know, putting out comics like Pop Records in the 60s. Got Alan Moore in the swing. Yeah.
I'd forgotten that until a few years ago when I went back and looked at sales reports for some reason, you know, sales numbers for some reason. I was like, really? Spawn 33 was the best-selling comic that month? But yeah, I was like, wow. So I think first of all, there's a lot more Spawn fans than, you know, we realize, just because no one thinks about how many Spawn fans there were before, you know. So I think just putting it in front of them, making it returnable. Maybe, like I said, Spawn 300 got a lot of attention. And I think just putting it in front of them and because I imagine if you were a Spawn fan in like 1996, if you walked into a comic shop in 2015, there'd be no Spawn for you to find.
Yeah.
Well, the numbers that John is getting on Comic-Con, I would assume those are retailer order numbers, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I think the concept of returnability alone is going to have a huge impact there, especially in the COVID thing, where it's going to make
which is why they get their estimate is actually 130,000 to or 100, maybe it's 120,000 to 150,000 or 130,000 to 100. Their estimate is like 20 or 30,000 copies in between the high and the low.
Spawn got a lot of mileage out of Todd McFarlane finally bringing in writers. Alan Moore's issue, Neil Gaiman's issue. You had a Miller issue nobody talked about.
That was early on. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Dave Sim came in there, and then in the teens, he got Graham Morrison, who brought an anti-Spawn or something out, you know, whatever it was. But what he did is those people made rules for the universe that was there for Spawn, and he got a lot of mileage that lasted years out of that. Then he got free publicity because he and Neil Gaiman had a lawsuit over who owns what characters, Angela, Callisto, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that didn't last long.
So you don't have a lot of that going on now. So for the fact that it jumped up to 100,000, I almost want to say it's almost by word of mouth, almost. You know, including everything you guys have said. You know,
I think it's because there was a huge pool of lapsed Spawn fans to begin with. Most comics don't have a huge pool. Yeah.
I think it's from that era that I was mentioning about how the writers came in and kind of laid a groundwork that he was able to mine. I don't know, man. It's amazing how Spawn is relevant again. That just blows my mind, you know.
Right. And like I said, I enjoyed this enough to buy it. I'm going to get the rest of the story. And it's really Todd McFarlane's writing isn't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. But the artwork carried it for me, and the writing was good enough to entertain me.
A little nostalgia brought people into that lab.
I never even bought Spawn. I bought more issues of Spawn when Eric Larson and McFarlane were doing it in these last 2 issues than I did in the previous, 270 issues. I bought maybe 4 issues of Spawn.
It's funny you brought
that up. It's not even nostalgia for me.
Other than maybe Usagi Yojimbo, a lot of the comics I like never really came out on a monthly basis.
Whoa.
They'd be
Why did you flip with Scott?
I was feeding a piece of lint or something on my screen, and on this touchscreen, this computer, I can now flip
it. You can move people around. Look at that.
We have a new trick. We have a new trick, people.
That's pretty neat. So if you guys get nausea here in a minute, you know what's going on.
Well, I'd like to know what this dot is on me. I'm not going to mess with my camera. It's killing me.
That's the laser pointer.
Right there.
Is that I just thought that was another piece of dust on my screen. My screen is so dusty, but no, it's on your
screen. I do see that.
Oh,
you've got a dead pixel or something. Oh, it's your microphone.
Light on your mic.
God, that black. Okay. All right.
It's the targeting dot from the laser scope on the rifle.
Great, a piece of black tape. I thought that was like on me, on my camera.
Yeah, I have so much dust on my screen. I really have to clean it. That was just like another dot on the. There we go.
I was watching Mandalorian the other day, and there was a spider that had crawled on the TV screen. And I'm sitting here, it's like, do I really want to get out of the chair and get the spider off the screen? And I had like a little momentary, like, do I get up or do I just sit here?
Oh,
I ended up just sitting there.
with this new high def TV, or I've had it for a few years. The high def TV. There was a show or two where there was a fly, and it was supposed to be a fly.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there like I want to get the fly off my screen, and it's part of the show. Now that doesn't sound like a spectacular story, but wait until you try that. It happens to you. It'll get on your nerves. Anyway,
I got some books for Christmas. I'm going to bring over too.
Nice.
This Tyler, is going to make it
Amazon wish
tired or full. Oh yeah. Hallow looks tired or full. I can't figure out which one.
Little of both. This is the Brubaker and Phillips one that came out this summer, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. I heard good things about it.
Oh, I love all their stuff, but it was like I remember when this came out, someone was like, "Oh, I thought I'd see that on your pull list this week," and I'm like, when they make graphic novels first instead of comics, I just kind of put them on my Amazon wish list, because I'm in no rush to get ones they release at graphic novels because one of my family gives my family something to give me for holidays and Christmas and birthdays, and B, it'll always be there cheaper or used on Amazon next month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, it's a graphic novel. I'll wait. So I'll wait for I waited for this one. Here it is now.
We're in an era where I think this is the future of getting real comics now, is what you're talking about.
I hope not, because it doesn't excite me at all.
Right.
It doesn't.
You mean graphic novels being published first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're still a ways away from that because there's no way to make them profitable yet.
I think we're on the road.
They are profitable if you think of licensing for foreign markets as a primary source of income.
Yeah,
because in the rest of the world, the periodicals are newsstand, and newsstands are dead.
Right. That's good for big companies, but not for small. Is the problem?
Not necessarily, and the small companies always did books. They never.
They did, but remember how you were saying they're having so much problems reprinting like a lot of stuff from the '80s that was small press because they don't know whoever owns it. I mean, when it's something like Usagi Yojimbo, it's easy enough, but when it's something like a 6-issue miniseries that came out in 2004, published by some small company that's now gone, that's when it gets problematic for foreign,
foreign publishers aren't really interested in something like Scout or Captain Canuck. But if there are current indie publications who have done by people who have a certain following, then they are interested. So if Brubaker has a series of ready-made graphic novels, they can get them printed in other languages right as they're coming out in the US.
I'm sure they are with stuff like this because these are the big guys in indies.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure they are, and they've been around a long time. So they could release this stuff in foreign editions fairly easily. I just don't think a lot of companies, I don't think Aftershock can, just to name one.
I can't wait for the day where something like that gets big, like in one country, and we end up having another guy like Don Rosa in America saying, "You know how big I am in Sweden." I'm waiting for that.
There was that time when Jeff Johns did that series in France. What was it? No, it wasn't Jeff Johns. It was John Cassidy. I Am Legion. I Am Legion was a series made for the French market first.
Oh yeah, that was one that's published by Humanoids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here is a human diastrophism. I don't even know how to say that word. It's one of Beto's books.
Hold on.
Love and Rockets, one of Beto's books. This must be from Love and Rockets Volume 3 when they were kind of this size, the books. It's a different proportion than some of the other ones. So I put this on my pull list a while after I read Luba, the whole big collected volume. I'm like, I need more Beto collected because I've got some Jaime Hernandez collected. I needed some Gilbert collected. So this one I can't wait to read. I really enjoyed Gilbert, which is funny. I have to tell Sleepy Reader that I was watching his reviews earlier today or yesterday, and one of the books he reviewed was what's the name? Beto's latest book that I bought last week, and he was reviewing it, and I went, "Hey, I never read that book last week. That comic, it was still in my pile somehow. I've forgotten. I read the other 7, but the books that I got last week, but somehow I forgot them. But Psychodrama Illustrated, that's the name of it.
I've done that, but it was months later when somebody bought it, and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, yeah.
I was just thinking that Psychodrama Illustrated sounds like an EC title.
I somehow forgot about it over the week. And then we got The Book Tour by Andy Watson, which I thought was a woman because it's spelled A-N-D-I, but it's not. It's a dude. I forget the name. I bought a couple of other things by him over the years. One of them about some guy working I think it may have been all semi-autobiographical, working in a pottery shop in England. And someone happened to have this on one of their graphic novel picks list that I saw on the internet. And I'm like, oh, Andy Watson. I haven't read his stuff in years. So I decided to put it on my list. I think there's another semi-autobiographical one about him going on a book tour. So I look forward to this. He does sort of slice of life stuff.
Nice.
Cool.
Up my alley. I like that.
Here's somebody that's been invited to the podcast for like over, a long time now. So hopefully we'll be seeing him on the show in the new year. Go check out his stuff.
Okay.
And I mentioned this one a couple weeks back. I think I saw Sleepy Reader got it too. This is the one, Adventure Man, that I said I liked red. There's still shrink wrap on it, I feel.
Yeah.
I said I liked...
looks like a Hughes cover from here.
It is. Oh, yeah.
Like the,
Terry Dodson.
I like the
Terry
logo
Dodson.
on that.
Okay.
And this is one where the first issue of it came out. It was like a $6, 80-page first issue. And it's by Matt Fraction, Terry Dodson, and... What's Terry Dodson's wife's name again? I can't remember.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel Dodson. And I picked up the first issue, and I was really disappointed by it. And then I saw it was coming out in this
Format.
European album format. And I remembered a couple of weeks I told you with Terry Dodson's Red One, I wasn't too fond of the issues. Then I read it in the European album format, and I really liked it. It just read so much better in that format. So I decided and since it's only like $25 for this nice big volume, I was like, all right, I'll put it on my pull.
I'm a big fan of that format.
Yeah, so am I. I'd like it. So I look forward to reading that one. And the last one I got is a comic history book. It's From Shadow to Light, The Life and Art of Mort Meskin. And we've mentioned Mort Meskin on here before. But it's got it's got sort of a biography of him plus lots of samples of his art.
Right.
And I actually, Bob Wyacek bought this book, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it came out, let me see. And I borrowed it from him and read it. And I really, really liked it because I didn't. Are you guys familiar with Mort Meskin at all? Because I wasn't.
A little.
Mm-hmm. A little. You were probably about as familiar as I was, which was not that much. Because he did mostly Golden Age work. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they say in here that's really interesting is that the two guys in like the early 40s who everyone looked at was Mort Meskin and Jack Kirby. So whenever a new Mort Meskin comic came out or a new Jack Kirby comic came out, every comic book artist would look at it to see what they were doing and see what they can take from it. Because those guys, comics were only born in 1938. So in 1941, they were still trying to figure it all out. So the guys who were really figuring it all out were Kirby and Meskin. and really interesting book about his history and what. I forget what. Like I haven't read it. I read it a few years ago, and I think he went out of comics in the 50s, and then in the 60s came back and did some stuff for DC, and that's the stuff we know, the stuff he did in the 60s for DC or whatever. But he was never a big name then.
Gotcha. And
what was especially interesting about this book to me personally was there's a lot of they interview in the back a guy named George Russos, who I worked with in Marvel from like the 70s to the 90s. George Russos worked at Marvel Comics in the office. He was their house colorist. He colored their covers amongst other things. So I, worked with him. I think he died in like 97 or something, maybe 90. He died in the late 90s. And he was in his 70s when he was working at Marvel in the 90s. So it's like I got to know him pretty well as they're sitting there. So it's interesting reading him telling stories about him and Mort Meskin sharing a studio in the early 40s. So it's just like fascinating stuff.
I like books like that are focused on one artist.
Yeah, it's really, like I said,
just to kind of put that in perspective, it's like we're coming close to that about us talking about the 80s.
Yeah.
And talking about that stuff would be like us talking about the 80s.
Oh, the 80s was so far away now. It's like, wow. Mm-hmm. But really nice stuff in Mort Meskin. Just good stuff.
Nice.
That's just it was interesting. Todd Klein, the letterer, has a blog called, I forget what it's called.
It's really good.
Really good blog. He just posted something this week about a guy, I don't remember his name, but he was like DC Comics' first production guy.
Okay.
And he did all sorts of spot illustrations. He worked in the office doing the production of the comics, but he did all sorts of spot illustrations for their text pages and their letters pages too.
Right.
And it was interesting reading this guy's story because he started out as a huge illustrator, like in the 20s, in the teens and the 20s. He was a huge illustrator, being a huge fine art painter, and then the Great Depression hit.
Right.
And just all of his clients, all the people who were buying his work just disappeared. They no longer had any money.
Do you remember the fellow's name?
I'll have to look at it. I actually posted it on my Facebook page.
Okay.
I posted a link to it. I'll look up his name when one of you guys are talking. But then he went and he took a job at DC, and much like sort of George Russos, this guy was there into his 70s working at DC Comics in the production department, well into like the 50s. So it's just fascinating to read about him just a little. And I think there were links to another article. Let me see if I can find his name now.
Okay.
Yeah, Mort Meskin is someone I wasn't really that familiar with, mainly because what I like investigating most is the history of Marvel, so I'm not as familiar with what was going on at DC or Quality or Fawcett. So, but I'm looking at some Meskin art right now. I think he and Kirby really were competitors in the way that they laid out pages, because I see the same action poses.
And the Meskin drew a lot more like Will Eisner kind of, and some of the olders. But yeah, you can see why people looked at Meskin when you look at his artwork. Because it was very dynamic. He was, like I said, he was they were inventing this all. That people didn't know how to do layouts for comics. They had no clue how to do the action and stuff. They were learning as they went along. And the guy's name is Raymond Perry. You can go to kleinletters.com and read about him.
Out there. Sorry, guys. My people are out there.
Another one.
Todd could probably write a...
Howard Grinch is hung up on that Wonder Woman movie.
Todd Klein could probably write a really interesting book just about his career. I mean, he's worked on so much stuff over the years.
Have you seen all the? He's been investigating Erwin Schapp's lettering, who was one of the first letterers for DC, and he's got all these posts about him going through series by series of stuff in DC from the 40s and 50s that Erwin Schapp lettered, and trying to figure out where he lettered because there's no credits. He's got to figure it out by the lettering styles.
Sure.
And it's just fascinating stuff.
What I like the most about these unknown production guys, and with the letters not being well known, was that there actually was a letterer called Joe Letteries.
It's kind of like having a professional baseball pitcher. His name was Bob Walk. It's like,
Joe Letteries.
Yeah, one of those historians who keeps putting out stuff he discovers in blogs. He usually looks up credits to about Joe Letteries to the GCD, the guy who became an expert on his lettering style. Can't remember which one it is, and I'm not sure if it's Michael Vassalo or the guy with this Marvel minutia. What was his name?
Yeah, I think I've read that Marvel minutia site. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it might be Nick. Yeah, I think it might be Nick Caputo. Well, I'll have to check.
I was just thinking, if I had to pick a favorite letterer, it probably would be Todd Klein.
I like Korzakowski.
Stan Sakai's a good letterer too.
Yeah.
Who
Who was it that I was looking at that lettering in the Kirby Fantastic Four Artist Edition? Was it Joe Rosen or Sam Rosen? I forget which one. There was some nice lettering in that.
I want to say it's Sam. That rings.
It might be Sam.
I think it's Sam.
I remember remarking on how nice the lettering was. And I remember in my remark, someone when I did the video about the Spirit Archive edition, the Spirit Artist Edition, I had no idea who the letterer was. Someone in the comments told me who the letterer was because Eisner had a lettering guy too. I was like, oh, good.
I mean, it's while we're talking about letters, but I think the first one who really popped out on me, who had his own style, was I want to say it was John Workman. Is that who works with Simonson a lot?
Yes.
John Workman's done a lot of work over the years. Yeah.
John Workman may be the first one I really noticed, but I remember seeing Ben Oda's name everywhere. And then, oh my God, Orlowski. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name. The guy who used to do X-Men all the time.
Yeah, it begins with the
Orzakowski.
Yeah.
Orzakowski.
I remember there was a time I felt like I couldn't pick up a book from anywhere in back in the bins, on the stands, whatever, and he was everywhere. And he was doing Claremont's novelization stuff that he was doing in his speeches and stuff in the X-Men and stuff. And I'm like, how does this guy even have time to do another book? That's
I
what
also
I
liked Willie Schubert did good lettering.
Yeah.
Is it John Workman who's lettering Walter's current Ragnarok thing?
I
think he is.
Yeah.
And he's doing it on the boards too. It's
and
I think he's the one who's doing the book.
Well, he's also penciled a lot of stuff too.
From what I pick up on it, that's probably why John Workman's name is on top of my head, because I forgot all about that. But I think I saw it 2-3 days ago that people were amazed that they're putting out a comic book by Simonson and going back to X Factor, and he's doing it old school, where everything is going to be laid out on the Bristol board. You know what I mean? Like everybody's amazed that they're going to be doing
it's Walt and Weezy are working together. So
something like that. I meant to look it up a little bit more, but I just kind of rolled my eyes when I saw people were amazed that they're talking about how he's doing the book. You know, like old school, and I'm like, I don't think he's the only one working like that. You know, here we go.
Yeah, he's the one. He's still lettering on the board.
And for an update on my thread on here, they just saw the headline today. It said DC is rethinking its movie franchise.
Again,
they've been rethinking their movie franchise since they started.
30 years.
Yeah, and these guys must have weekly meetings where they're always rethinking what they're going to do. I mean, you can't do planning for the next 5 years if you're constantly rethinking every week.
Can you not just sit down and watch one of the movies you make and not tell? We could have had some heroes in here, maybe a fight scene or something happen, or I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you can't watch. Can you imagine being an actor in a bad movie? How can you not tell it's not going well? Vince Neil of Motley Crue even knew Theater of Pain was a crap album when he'd get on stage and try to sell it. Now, if Vince Neil can figure out something,
Paul Chadwick.
I'm sorry. I want to come back to Motley Crue later. Just remind me of that.
Yeah.
Paul Chadwick did a great concrete miniseries on making movies and how bad movies get made. And I can't remember the name of it, but I have it. I'm just looking up.
It wasn't Killer Smile.
They hired Concrete to do special effect. He was going to be the special. His great strength would help them make the special effects cheaper. That was their whole idea. And Paul Chadwick based this on his time in Hollywood doing storyboards and helping to make movies and stuff, and how no one starts out to make a bad movie. And yes, they do know they're in bad movies sometimes, but things happen beyond their control that turn it into a bad. It's kind of like inevitable things start happening, and everybody's like, "Oh, everybody knows it's bad. No one can stop it from happening," kind of thing. It really opened my eyes to and shone a light on how movies are made to me.
Everybody that's watching this right now, if you have not read Concrete, go do it.
I'm fighting digging through my shelf back here because I'm like, I know I still have that.
It's one of the best comics ever done.
I totally get how things can get taken out of your hands and it goes haywire. We've all been there with anything. I mean, I get it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But somebody had to make the damn decision that Wonder Woman could lasso clouds.
Clouds?
She lassoed clouds. Yeah. It's the fly.
But the problem is somebody probably didn't make that decision. It just happened sort of as a result of 3 or 4 people making the decision. That's how these things happen. It's not one person who says, I want Wonder Woman, unless you get a guy that like Kevin Smith tells in his story how the guy was like, I want Superman to fight a giant spider.
Hungarian snare beast.
Yeah. And unless you get a guy like that, it just so happens where somehow the idea comes up and or it might be a placeholder idea. We'll come back and put something in that place later. But the creative process has got the soup has got too many cooks. It's not efficient. So no one ever fixes what someone meant to fix. And it just all of a sudden you find yourself with a scene of Wonder Woman lassoing a cloud, and it's pivotal to the movie, and no one can take it out anymore. Yeah, that's how that stuff happens sometimes. It's crazy.
When you said Kevin Smith, it made me think of a video I did years ago where I was talking about the Killing Joke, but I didn't finish my thought. I talked about how I watched the commentary of Kevin Smith talking about Mallrats, which I thought was a great movie, a fun movie for what it was. I knew this wasn't a blockbuster. I knew what I was getting into watching it. I thought it was cool. You watch the commentary, Kevin Smith tears it apart. And by the time you're at the end of the commentary, you're agreeing with them like, yeah, that did suck. And it kind of like you lose something. I was doing a video where I started out talking about Kevin Smith's commentary, talked about the Killing Joke, and I never finished it trying to say, thanks to all the people that worked on Alan Moore talking about the Killing Joke, I didn't realize it sucked until I listened to him. It's always bothered me. It always bothered me that I can't go back 7-8 years and finish that video the right way because of that. I didn't go all the way with like, thanks to Alan Moore doing a Kevin Smith. Now I know why Killing Joke is supposed to.
The people who put the thoughts in your heads have ruined it for you.
Yeah. You showed me. You pulled back the curtain and showed me the flaw. I still think Killing Joke's good, but
I never thought it was good. Like I said, we've had this discussion before. I've never thought it was good, but I don't think it's terrible either.
Well, here's an interesting question. That just popped up in my head for a second. It's talking like this book's good, this book's bad. Do you have like one book that you would say this is either my favorite or this is one I really, 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 really like?
No. Okay. I've got a lot of books I really like.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Tusk did pop in my head. I like Tusk of all things.
I haven't seen it.
The Fleetwood Mac song?
Yeah, that's
No.
what I think when I hear the word Tusk.
Yeah.
No, it's a Kevin Smith movie.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I ever saw that one.
He made a guy go full walrus. I'll just leave it at that.
Is that the one he made because of Rhino?
No, somebody called in, and there was I don't know, something happened in Canada where somebody saw a board where it's like looking for a roommate or a companion, and they whipped it off, and then this guy in Canada was using that as a trap to get kids or something. So live on his podcast, the guy starts telling him how the guy had a thing for walruses, almost like it was a true story. And on his podcast, Kevin Smith went, copyright, trademark, I'm making that movie. That's it right here. And he went on to make a movie about a guy who goes to interview a dude up in Canada because he has a podcast like he does. And he got Johnny Depp in there, who completely made himself unrecognizable. And the guy has been collecting people, and he'll skin them, and he tries to turn them into a walrus because he tells a tale that is fascinating, man. He tells the tale of him being shipwrecked on an island, and his only companion was a walrus, like it's a freaking novel that you would read by the fireside to your family. It's so elegant, some of those stories. So to make him go,
all he needed was just to have Jamie Heineman show up with a machine gun and here comes the walrus and he's coming to get you.
So it ends with the dude, he comes out and you're like, oh my God, what did he do to him to make him look like a walrus? And then you figure out that it's all the people he skinned, and he's even got a face on his back where he kept that skin, that he skinned all these people and he sewed it to where it's a freaking walrus costume. He's flopping around and his hands are like hands.
So this is the Halifax Chainsaw Massacre?
Yeah. So he made, and Kevin Smith referred to it as this is the part where we made Justin Long go full walrus. We thought he went a little crazy for real.
Full walrus.
Never go full walrus.
I want to tell you something about Jared that I saw that I had respect for you. Don't get me wrong, but for about 30 seconds you went to almost hero level respect, and we're back down to the respect. I had a moment where you did almost tip the scale there for a minute and stuff. But on that Zoom meeting you had, we had that person come on there and start putting down white man stories about white men. And I'm sitting there I don't know these people well enough to know what to say here. I was very uncomfortable. Jared called him out, and I was like...
He really wasn't putting down white men stories. He was just kind of complaining about it in a way. Now,
I'm trying to be vague. You know what I mean? It's coming out wrong, but I'm just trying to be vague.
Yeah,
I don't want
to... He was just complaining. You know how people sometimes complain about Friends? Oh, there's too many white people in it. I'm like, come on. It was just sort of that complaint about The Stand. He was reading the book and he was like, oh yeah, they just have these white guys in there. And I'm like, oh come on, you would never say that about any other color. And also because publishing now is completely different.
Yeah, what got me is that he came in and I was like, oh cool, this guy's friends with Jared. So I had that moment where I'm like, there's company, I'll be polite. And then he said 2 or 3 cool things that he's working on. The Anthrax comic, Scott. I'll just put it there. Right. And then all of a sudden he completely just shit in the punch bowl when he said that. And I'm stuck looking like a ventriloquist dummy because I want to say something, but it's not my house.
It was my house, so I could say something. Yeah, I know Scott for years anyway. So, but no, it's funny. He was talking about The Stand and how the whatever.
Yeah.
What brought it up too was the new Stand TV show. The Larry Underwood character, one of the white guys he's complaining about, is now black. And I ended him like, he's now a black second-rate Bruce Springsteen. Same, it really doesn't matter, what color they are. That wasn't my point. My point was I hate to hear people complain, especially white guys, that there's too many white guys in some story. I'm like, society has programmed you to hate yourself.
Well,
what's with that? I always call out self-hating white guys.
Well, like I said in that Zoom meeting, man, I've actually read books before you get either I skimmed over the description or it wasn't that big, very good description. And these people end up forming in my head, and they're not always white. That was my whole point. A well-written character that you write that is well done, living and breathing, kind of takes an image of their own, where they're almost alive if you've done it right. You know.
And my point too was publishing now is so female centric. Take it from a 50-year-old white guy who can't get a design job because that's not the demographic of publishing these days. And I always point out that I get Prime Video. I'm a member of Amazon Prime, and every month they send you 9 free books that you can choose 2 of. And every month I notice 8 out of the 9 books are either written by women or have female lead characters. 8 out of 9 every month. And I'm like, if this were 8 out of 9 were male characters or male writers, people would be up in arms. But since it's female writers, everyone's just okay with it. And I'm just like, and like I said, every time I hear people complaining about comics being too male, I'm like, you don't understand. That's the one small area of publishing that's male. The 99% of the rest of publishing is female centric, and everybody's okay with it. So that's why I was saying something to Scott that night too, because that's just one of my triggers when I hear someone's, especially like my friends privately, when I hear a fellow white guy putting down white guys, I'm just like, stop it. They've made you into a self-hating white guy. Why? Have some fairness for yourself as well, because we're the feminist generation. We've grown up with fairness as an idea in our heads, and it means something to all of us. So be fair to us too. That's all I'm asking.
To make the guy be fair to himself, he needs to read Ayn Rand.
No, he does not. Nobody needs to read Ayn Rand.
Why not?
Do you like
speaking of white guys?
Sorry, somebody thinks Tusk is awful here. Little podcast. I just saw a comment.
By the way,
I got that drum beat going through my head now. Thanks.
Our guest from last week, Jeff Sebesta, had his War on Christmas go live on Kickstarter today, Christmas Day.
Oh, that's right.
We'll have him on another day.
I did go right live today.
So I pledged it. It was I think it's a single comic for $5 and will cost you $3 for shipping in the U.S. I made the $18 pledge, which gets you a sketch in the comic.
That's cool.
So go over to Kickstarter, look up War on Christmas comic by Jeff Sebesta, who was on. He was on with us last week. We had a good time chatting.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
We need to be invited back now that his Kickstarter's live.
Yeah, we'll do that.
5 or 6 people.
Right.
Cool. I'm
Once
glad
Christmas
you brought
and
that
New
up.
Year's are over, we'll have him back on.
There's $151 gets you the comic and the sculpture.
Oh,
What
the elephant sculpture? All
one
right.
extra $1, not 150, but 151.
Yeah, $1 for the comic and $150 for the sculpture.
I see what you mean. That makes sense. Well, Tim got really.
Tim's off looking for something. I wonder what he's got over there.
You can see me?
No, I can't. That's why I was making the comment.
Oh. I just had to find something. My vinyl of Tusk, since that's the thing.
Oh.
What is that?
It's
the Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac Tusk.
Yeah, I've got that drum beat going through my head now. Thanks.
Yeah. That's about it. Oh.
Tusk.
Well, guys, we're down to 6 people. I can feel, I can hear the silence from the snow insulating all the sounds. It's my feet are cold, my head is warm.
Well, I had a topic.
When I mentioned Ayn Rand, you two probably shadow banned us.
We lost 3 people. I don't know if it was coincidence or not.
I'm not a fan of Ayn Rand.
I had a couple comic book topics I wanted to bring up.
All right, let's do this.
The first being related to Spawn, I guess, is the Star Wars sales. Have you guys noticed a lot more Star Wars stuff on YouTube in recent weeks? I know I have.
Comics wise?
comics wise, people buying comics.
We mentioned this
Really had a lot
briefly.
of attention.
We mentioned this briefly last week about
Right.
things on eBay, first appearances, that kind of thing. I actually have a Star Wars Tales #1 that got hot for like probably an hour because it had the first Death Troopers or whatever in it.
Right.
So what's getting me is that there are people out there who know their Dark Horse Star Wars so well, they automatically know first appearances when they pop up on like Mandalorian or something.
Yeah.
I mean, automatically. Like, it's like the show is on, it's already on eBay.
It is kind of interesting to see, even though they rebooted the continuity, so to speak, how much they're taking from the extended universe and putting it into canon now.
Disney flat out said before their first movie came out, we're not pulling anything from the extended universe.
Well,
and that's what's keeping them afloat. Seriously.
Yeah, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau said, well, here's what we're going to do. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah. Once again, the guy who has the authority to say we're not pulling anything from the extended universe does not want to be a continuity cop because he's a bigwig. So what always happens is the guys underneath him who, when he's not looking, which is always, do whatever they want. Which is why Jon Favreau did whatever he wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how much influence they have on the film stuff, but I do know that Lucasfilm has 2 dedicated employees that do nothing but continuity.
But they might not even listen to the guy who has the power to say.
That's who knows how the hierarchies work there.
Right.
Well,
I'm just saying, if you have enough power, and and same thing with Marvel and DC, if you have enough power to say we're going to do a reboot and not pay attention to any, then you don't want to be a continuity cop, and everybody's going to subvert that. That's how it always works, time after time.
Noticing continuity is something normal in movies because they want to make sure they don't have goofs like you're wearing a blue shirt in one scene and then when you come back to the scene you're wearing a red shirt. Yeah,
that's what a continuity error.
That's a different form.
Yeah. I'm not saying you need to go over everything with a microscope. You know what I mean? Right. But if you don't having that continuity in there because that the fans keep up with.
Yeah,
if you don't respect the property, then why are you even there?
I think most people that have seen The Mandalorian don't realize how much stuff has been pulled from the extended universe.
But there are people that do. Well, one of the things,
there are. Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do remember is that Dark Horse Star Wars stuff, going all the way back.
Was good.
And not only was it good, but that's what kept a lot of the actual Star Wars fans connected. So I'm not saying that it's a fan base by today's standards. We're going into the 20 to 30 years later, but they did alienate a big part of fandom who follows Star Wars, and that's why. And I think that's a big part of this Mandalorian of why it gets acclaimed, even though that
it's brought them all back.
But you've got the people who still love that extended universe being like, my God, they got that right.
Plus, Favreau and Filoni care about the material they're working on.
Yeah.
Which makes a huge difference.
But the reason I bring up Star Wars is because Chuck Rosansky's newsletter from Mile High Comics has been fascinating the last couple of weeks. Because I did not read... First of all, he said 5 years ago when Star Wars first came out, the new Marvel Star Wars, he nearly bankrupted Mile High Comics buying variant editions of Star Wars because he thought they were going to be big.
Yeah, and there was like a ridiculous amount of variants. There were like 60 or 70 or something like that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
And now it took 5 years, but it's finally paying off. He says you will not believe how hot back issues of Star Wars are, especially since he has all the variants.
We'll come back.
And he said that right now, over the last month or two, back issues of Star Wars have been the single biggest selling category of anything he sells. Back issues of Star Wars outsell back issues of DC and back issues of Marvel.
I'm calling it. I'm saying it's The Mandalorian.
It's The Mandalorian.
That's the big driving factor.
got everybody interested in Star Wars again.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, with to add to that, what I'm saying is that everybody wants the hot books. We've had that talk about the speculation, but people get some of those books and then they actually read them and they're like, "This is good," and that's making them check out more stuff. That's what I
also,
think.
He was saying that some of these print runs on the alternate covers were so minuscule that with this renewed interest, the prices have just shot up on them. Because he said we're talking print runs of 2,000 or 3,000 copies for an alternate cover.
a lot of those were like store exclusive covers.
Yeah, and he was buying them all up 5 years ago, nearly bankrupting.
Yeah, I mean, what, like 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't even hardly give away Star Wars comics.
No. Unless you were Howard Chaykin, you never saw Star Wars comics all through the 90s. And into the 2000s.
The newer stuff, that's wild because, like, I'm not going to get into that. But I know the Dark Horse stuff is hot. And I can go to Ollie's now and I can get 2 or 3 hardbacks of the newer series that they had Jason Aaron doing and the Mace Windu miniseries they came out with. And they sit there. I mean, I know they're not selling out like the other stuff. But every now and then you'll find something left over from a Dark Horse trade or something. And it's gone. Like, they're gone, you know.
It's interesting what Pope Service the First just said here. He was trying to sell 1 to 14 and it wouldn't go. The newer stuff is where people are. So it really is. It's this stuff that just Rosansky all bought up, you know.
There, like I said, there is a fandom. There is a fandom that just are really big into the extended universe. I mean, they got their niche, and they'll get on. I remember seeing some of them before to get on message boards. I think it was comicboards.com had a Star Wars section, and I remember seeing those guys getting on there back in the 2000s and talking about the Dark Horse stuff in the novels. They would pull some of the novels in there, you know. So they're there, and I bet they're just like they're the guys having a good time now, you know.
And when you think about The Mandalorian, anyone here know any ratings for that? How many people do you think actually watched The Mandalorian?
I don't know if
it's got to be in the tens of millions, right?
See, I'm kind of wondering. Yeah, when it comes to Disney, well, you know, it's got to be because they'll release how many subscribers they have. And then they'll release how the subscriptions went up during a month. Mandalorian comes on. I think it shoots up by like maybe 1 million or so off the top of my head. I don't know. I mean, I haven't tracked it, but I've seen them. Netflix and I think Disney Plus, I haven't really seen them talk about ratings too much. Not saying they haven't, but, you know.
And it's worldwide Star Wars, too.
Right.
Yeah, because with this model with this subscription model, they're able to gauge international interest immediately, which is something and they don't have to bother with selling the rights to a TV channel. They just put it out, and they know immediately that people in other countries are watching.
Right. So you think about it, like if 30 million people watched The Mandalorian. That would probably be an easily doable number, you'd think. Like, I mean, it has to be that big, right?
Yeah.
So all it would take was like a percentage of those to get interested in Star Wars comics, and it'll shoot the price up like crazy.
I waited till The Mandalorian ended, like it had the full season. Because they do put them out week by week. $6. We flew through season 2 of The Mandalorian in like 2 days for $6.
Yeah, I watched one season in one day and one season the next day. So
if it's 30 million, if it's 30 million potential watchers, if only 0.1% of those start going after comics, it's 30,000 people all at once.
Yeah. With comics that have a print run of 2,000 or 3,000 in the old one. So it's like no wonder the prices are going crazy.
It would be interesting also to see why, I guess Marvel has the license now, why they're not a little more aggressive in pushing the Star Wars stuff.
Well, I think they already have they have a lot of Star Wars stuff. They do.
True.
The fact of the matter is after the 2 movies, right? I'm not going to get into if they're bad or good or whatever people think. You like them, I got my opinions. Everybody has their opinions. The
haven't seen
Mandalorian is actually the closest it can be to be the thing that's carrying the Star Wars franchise on its back.
Oh yeah, there's a meme that John Favreau had to go to the hospital because he had damage from carrying the whole franchise, out of obscurity.
Well,
That's funny.
using me as an example, if you can get me to watch your Star Wars show, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen. I'm not a Star Wars fan. Saw the original 3 movies. Liked the comic book when Walt Simonson was on it. I watched 10 minutes of the first prequel and never went back to it. I've not watched any of the new Star Wars movies, but I watched all of The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian is so good that when they had 2 stormtroopers on their bikes, and they had a bag with a freaking puppet in it, and the dude was punching it, and it was pissing me off.
Yeah,
that's good stuff, man.
Right.
When they had that season finale come in, and when I saw that X-wing fly by, and they said it was just one, I was sitting there going, "No way!" And they got me. Yeah. And then they had another character walk in right when you think you've seen the greatest thing, and it was just like the 1-2 punch. They know what they're doing.
Right.
I'm going to spoil it. Okay, I'm going to spoil it. But when R2 walked in, I'm like, those motherfuckers got me again. My man.
But also just the storytelling, the cinematography, and the directing of that last episode was beautiful.
Yeah. The way they brought in Boba Fett was great. It was a story within the story.
Well, to me, it all goes back to the 2 guys, Filoni and Favreau.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have respect and they like the material they're working on.
And they have talent too. That's really important.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, Scott. I know you and I have talked about it before, but I think that's a lot of what's missing. The Last Jedi. That dude that wrote that, Rian Johnson, did not have respect for what he was on. I know he did not.
Yeah, I'm just.
He put it on a salty world, world made of salt, and he had Luke throw a lightsaber over his shoulder. There's no misinterpreting that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
One of the things I liked about the finale of The Mandalorian, which I think pissed off a lot of people about some of the prequel movies, is you got to see these characters being heroes.
Yeah, something you want to strive to be.
Exactly. Yeah. You didn't see like some half-baked, watered down version of a character.
Your heroes. A hero's a lie. There's no. That's the theme. They want to prove there's no such thing as a hero. They all have lead feet. Heroes are about striving to be something, and that's what Star Wars brings out, in my opinion.
Well, I also think you guys are downplaying talent when you say stuff like he doesn't have respect for the characters. I don't think that comes into play at all. I think talent comes into play. If you have the talent to make a good movie,
right,
you'll automatically respect the characters. That you respect or don't respect the characters isn't even an issue.
Well, don't you think
it's the lack of talent that makes you think they don't respect the characters? But it's not that they don't respect the characters.
Well, what about the fact that if you have the talent, that means you have instincts that tell you how to use your talent to make it good?
That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, respecting the merchandise. Your talent lets you
know. But basically, you're putting the horse before the cart. I mean, the cart before the horse.
Okay.
Or the dark horse.
No one starts out with disrespect for disrespect for the Star Wars and then makes a bad Star Wars movie. You start out with a lack of talent, and you have no idea how to make a Star Wars movie, and you make a Star Wars movie, and it looks like you have no respect for Star Wars because you don't have the talent to know how to make a Star Wars movie.
I find your lack of talent disturbing.
Yeah.
I just feel like when you troll your audience, that's showing no respect. I'm talking about one movie, one person, not the whole franchise.
You're talking about somebody else, right?
That's
I'm talking about one
you're not
person. Yeah.
You're not trolling. You're usually guys like that. They're not trolling their audience. That's all for themselves.
which is trolling the audience. They're getting off on it.
No, they're not even. You think they're thinking about the audience because you're you-centric.
No, he confirmed it on Twitter. He was trolling the audience. I saw him.
Yeah,
say
no, but I'm saying that's only to the audience that wants to get trolled. You have to buy into the idea that he's trolling the audience. If you don't buy into the idea of he's trolling the audience, he's not trolling you. Kind of. He's just talking. You're only getting I'm not upset that he was trolling the audience. Why not? Because I don't buy into the whole concept of trolling the audience. I just think that's nonsense. I think that's just him trying to get attention. He's doing things in his head to get it for whatever reason he thinks is good. And you're getting into things in your head that gives you a part in this Star Wars universe to be the audience that is being trolled. It makes, in his head, it makes him more important, and in your head, it makes you more important. In my head, I'm just like, what are these nuts doing?
I just want Luke to be a Jedi master and wise, not like some.
Yeah, I know. We all do, but the fact that guy didn't make him a Jedi master doesn't mean he's trolling the audience. That means that's the best movie he can make with his limited talent, and it didn't go over right with a lot of people. And then later on, in order to justify it in his head, he's trolling the audience. And you, as the audience, are like, "Oh, I'm getting trolled."
I think no, he made a bad movie, and he's trying to say he did it on purpose.
Well, I do have
right.
to.
He did it because you can't say I made a bad movie because I'm not talented.
So
the artistic ego won't let you.
He made a bad movie. He's trying to say, and he's trying to act like he meant to make the movie the way it was.
He's trying to save face in his own head.
And then he's justifying it, saying, "I'm trolling the audience." He's trying to act like that was his whole reason for doing it.
Regardless of your viewpoint, it all boils down to they picked the wrong person to do it.
The movie, it was a sucky movie. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
he could have equally. I mean, movies are such a group effort. He could have easily been hamstrung by someone else too. I mean, I don't specifically know these people. I don't know what they're. That could happen to you. Don't count that out. You know, you can see a guy make.
Yeah, that actually happened in John Carter. It was intentionally hamstrung by several people.
There we go. I can go with that, but Rian Johnson put himself front and center for being writer director. It's like he took the credit. He put himself up there like I did it.
But like a lot of that's ego. And it's okay for you to shoot down his ego, but you've got to realize that's just his ego. That's not necessarily truth, what he's saying. That's his ego making him say it. Because imagine you're a Star Wars director and you make a Star Wars movie and you like this Star Wars movie you make, and a lot of people may like this Star Wars movie you make, and then there's a lot of people who don't, and they'll let you know.
Are you familiar with this movie, Rian Johnson's movie, Knives Up, the big mystery thing?
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
Okay. Yeah. When the trailer came out, all I said on Twitter, I think it was Twitter, anyway, on something all I said was like, "Oh, Rian Johnson's made a mystery movie." I said it's going to be the white guy that did it, and people got so mad, and then it turned out to be the white dude did it. I was like, I think I got a handle on Rian Johnson. Just saying.
Yeah, like you might. I don't know, but I'm saying it's his lack of talent that is. That could be it. Not his trolling the audience. His trolling the audience is a sideshow that's meaningless.
I think sometimes too, when you have a franchise, the people that are in control of franchises are really too quick to pull a trigger on, like, here comes this hot new director, we need to get him, when he may not be the right person for that project.
Yeah. But to bring it back to comics and talent, I had another idea this week. In our never-ending quest to dissect what is wrong with Marvel and DC comics.
Everything.
Wait a minute. Let me take a breath here so I can stay on your topic because I'm ready to go. You know,
he's hulking up. He's getting ready for whatever.
Here was an idea, a thought I had, and it of all people, it revolves around Sal Buscema. I'm in a Sal Buscema group on Facebook that Sal Buscema fans post Sal Buscema art or whatever. And if you're a Bronze Age kid like some of us were here, you're probably very familiar with Sal Buscema's work.
I met him in the early 2000s, and I don't know what book he signed in my collection. I have no idea. I forget that he did it, but he was. But I also went on, and just had to shut my mouth up because apparently I misunderstood something. But I heard him say to the guy in front of me who brought 75 books to get signed, that as he was signing them, and his wife was just behind him looking at him like, "See, people love you, and they're so proud." You know what I mean? Like she was just so happy for him that he said, "Oh yeah, John's got the talent, but you ought to see our brother who's not into comics. He's the real artist." Right. And I've never have been able to confirm there's a third Buscema brother. But carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Yeah.
But anyway, I like Sal Buscema's art. I've always been a Sal Buscema fan. I enjoy his art. And he was even one of these guys who grew it's like he did some nice stuff in the 70s. The 80s, I didn't see too much of his stuff, and he kind of fell off my radar. I wasn't a huge fan of his 80s stuff. He was also very dependent on it. He could do some nice stuff or not, depending on who his inker was. He kind of reinvented himself in the 90s and did some more nice stuff.
Yeah, he came in with tight pencils in the 60s because he wanted a job. 70s, he was all over the place. I mean, the Buscema brothers. Come on, man. You know.
Yeah.
Then in the 80s, I agree with you. I know he's on Spider-Man. But he got that attention when he changed it to that style that you're talking about on Web
his Walt Simonson style, as he called it.
Yeah.
And which he got when he replaced Simonson on Thor. You remember that Simonson started drawing X Factor? Yeah. That's when he put Sal working on his Thor scripts. Because he had already left Hulk and Rom.
Right.
He went to do Thor. He went to do...
That's kind of when I lost track of him.
Mm-hmm. And then he went to Spider-Man.
I some of his Thor work.
But the stuff he did in the 90s with Bill Sienkiewicz inking him was real good. And I've actually got a page in my collection. I forget who did the pencils, but Sal Buscema did the inks, and it's real good, too. You know, that's his Thor stuff?
Yeah. Okay. This is out of the Warlock, Mutant Massacre, 86, 87. Great stuff, man. I mean, he evolved as a freaking artist.
But to me, Sal Buscema is a solid B artist. B to B plus, you know, wherever you want to put him. But he wasn't what I'd call a creative powerhouse. There are certain guys in comics.
He had his style was recognizable because he had a lot of typical Sal Buscema tropes.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, like I said, but to me, like I said, B plus art. Nothing wrong with Sal Buscema. I like his work. I like that his work evolved. I like that he kept trying to keep it fresh. But he wasn't what I'd call a creative powerhouse. Like Jack Kirby, of course, creative powerhouse. Neil Gaiman. Like Neil Adams, I want to say. And then kind of it changed over time into writers became creative powerhouses too, like Neil Gaiman and like Alan Moore. And like there's certain guys to me, even in the 90s, like Rob Liefeld, I'll bring up his name to make Scott wince. But even Rob Liefeld was a creative powerhouse, even if I don't personally like his work. He did very influential, created a lot of stuff. Todd McFarlane, creative powerhouse. Most of the creative powerhouses I can think of were artists, but I think that's because comics are such a visual medium. And there are some who are writers, especially these days. But when I started to think about one of the problems with first of all, DC was sort of was a more corporate company long before Marvel. So DC reached kind of full corporate company era by the 60s. And when you think about it, is there anyone you'd call a creative powerhouse from DC in the late 50s, early 60s? What writer could you think of?
Carmine Infantino.
He's the closest I think we can get.
Gardner Fox, Carmine Infantino, and that might be.
No, I would say Gardner.
Yeah. I don't want to say Gil Kane because Gil Kane actually started evolving when we replaced Kirby as the main artist guy at Marvel in the 70s.
Right.
But
It's his 70s style that makes it.
right, indeed, and you start like Neil Adams started in DC, and I think he like by the late '60s he was able to do that stuff at DC because of Marvel, because of the creative powerhouses at Marvel that influenced DC a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like some of these guys were laying seeds to become powerhouses before they hit big in the 70s.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right, but they
Joe
really.
Kubert.
Joe, I don't even know that Joe Kubert was a creative powerhouse. To me, he was another B plus artist. He was an A plus. He was an A talent. But but his work itself, his kind of comics were all B plus to me.
yeah.
His best work, which I'd give an A to, is that Facts from Sarajevo.
What about Russ Heath? Maybe Russ Heath, if we kind of pushed it a little bit.
Maybe if we draw back to the EC age, we can think of the creative powerhouses at EC.
Oh, they were chock full of them.
Mort Meskin, creative powerhouse.
Yeah, you just destroyed this conversation right there. You bring up the EC guys.
Right.
Right. Lots of creative powerhouses at EC, most of them artists. But also EC, not very corporate.
Sure.
I think we got
compared to other companies, yeah.
The delay has kicked in. We're getting comments about stuff we talked about a few minutes ago. Our time, even a long show like yours isn't long enough to cover what's wrong with those guys. The problems with all DC and Marvel. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We're getting stuff on Batman.
I'm always coming up with new ideas for what's wrong with them too. And this is one of my. This is one that struck me. For some reason, as I was thinking about Sal Buscema. And I think it has to do with the corporate structure. Once you reach a certain level of, like, Marvel in the 60s was a seat of your pants corporation. The power structure was so shallow that Stan Lee could do what he wanted.
Yeah, they slowly changed over time.
Yeah, see, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have more input on this at midnight tonight after thinking about it, because I'm sitting here thinking Image took away that power when all those guys took off. You know, those guys taking off the form Image. And then I saw something like 2-3 years ago where Marvel and DC flat out said there will be no more stars or powerhouse. We're not going to make stars anymore.
Now, I'm the one who told you that, because I heard that in 1992 after I forget who it was. It was either Tom DeFalco or they said
it recently. Recently, they actually said it too. Yeah,
that's the last time we make stars out of artists.
Yeah, and
I actually heard that with my own ears at Marvel Comics.
In sometime in the last 2 years, they
heard it
out. They put it out in an interview or something somewhere. Yeah.
So anyway, cut now to Marvel is just as corporate. Well, they're slightly shallower power structure, but much more corporate than they once were.
Yes.
I think they have one of the reasons they're kind of not what they use, and they can still put out good comics. I'm not saying their comics are bad. I'm saying they've, due to their corporate structure, have eliminated the possibility of creative powerhouses.
Mm-hmm.
So the best you get now from Marvel and DC is a B plus artist writer. And they're not untalented. I'm not even saying they can. B plus comics are good, but they've eliminated. You will never see another Frank Miller at Marvel. That kind of creative powerhouse. You will never see another Todd McFarlane at Marvel. That kind of creative powerhouse. Even Eric Larson, who to me, I'm not a fan of Eric Larson's Marvel years, but when he was there, you could maybe make an argument that he was a lesser creative powerhouse, because, like I said, I don't think he was as big a creative powerhouse as Lee, Liefeld, and McFarlane. And when you think about, even at that time, DC was so corporate that they really didn't have any of those. They'd exploit the creative powerhouse guys once they emerged, but they really didn't come up at DC. So now there's no place at Marvel and DC for the creative powerhouse guy to emerge.
Well, you know what? I was trying to think of a tactful way to say this, because I agree with you. But what Marvel and DC seems to at least put out the last couple of years and I'm just going to bottom line it. I don't know if it's going to sound tactful. I know it's going to be all over the place for a little bit, but it's almost like you got to be a certain. What they're pushing for is the creative person, be it a writer or an artist. They want to know what the lifestyle is and the diversity check boxes are. That's how you get noticed. They're pushing a writer right now, so you cannot say one thing that they have put out, but they get put out in the articles, and other people that work there are praising this person. You know,
I think that's I think that's a tiny part of it, though. I think the overall,
it's there,
but
talent.
That's a tiny part. I think that's become a game of survival among comic stuff, but that still doesn't.
I think it's them trying to market to the people who care about that stuff that are younger. Okay, but those are the people that get the work, and then there's nothing they're putting out their own sales.
Let me ask you a question. Okay.
That doesn't apply to the artists.
Yeah, let me ask you a question.
But comic book artists are so rare that it doesn't apply to them.
So the people that are complaining about all these different things, you're claiming that they're checking boxes to hit a certain demographic.
It's there. I'm not.
I'm not. Which is fine. But are these people that are reading the books?
Yeah, we don't know about that. Yeah,
right.
I don't think that. No. Well, I think that's a sideshow. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying it's a sideshow.
They're trying to use it to sell books, and it's not selling books.
Well, so my question is, are they kowtowing to an audience that's not reading the books in the first place?
They've been doing that for years.
There's one thing that we have to remember about.
They're coming for me. They're coming for me. I made somebody mad. Sorry.
There's a reason why we have to remember. There's a reason why these corporate people they always feel like they have to have a creative hand because they're not creative people, and so they come up with these supposed marketing pushes to get to specific audiences, whatever that means, because they have focus groups and they have market studies. But one thing that those market studies never tell them is, okay, people like this in the focus group, but will they buy it? Because it's not just because they like it then. So they feel the need that since they're higher up in the corporate structure than anyone with creative power, they're going to get listened to first. So they are going to put out to these diversity check boxes simply because they have the market study. It's not a conscious decision. I don't believe that it's a conscious decision because they have to make sure that they're right to people whose main focus is stock prices. Mm-hmm. They don't care if things are diverse or not. If it's diverse and the stock prices rise, it's good. If the stock price is lower, that's bad.
Well, once again, I think that's a sideshow. I think the main problem is I said before, Jordan Peterson's thing where hierarchies filter out the most creative people. Well, I think that's what happens as comics get a more corporate hierarchy. It filters out the guys who could be creative powerhouses, because when you've got a tall corporate structure like Marvel and DC have now, the guys who start down the bottom who are creative powerhouses, as they rise up, they bump their heads against the corporate guys and they leave. So you may see something so all those creative powerhouse guys who could exist in the 60s because the corporate structure was so shallow. Mm-hmm. Just in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, it can't exist anymore because they may do some comics here or there, but they never get. But they have to buy into the hierarchy so much. Whatever the hierarchy may have something. That's when that whatever social stuff you may have comes down from some point. But if you can't make your way up the hierarchy, you'll never. Yeah. They filter out the creative powerhouses.
Yeah, now let me make clear, when I make comments and stuff like that, I'm looking at them as like a writer or a business. It's not a personal thing. I'm not here to like name names.
Right.
I mean, we're just talking about the job and stuff, right? But I was going to try to bring up that one writer that Marvel was really all praising because of what they identified as, not because of a book, what their talent is, a book they're writing. and it just came up with what you're talking about. I just realized Warren Ellis has pretty much had his feet cut off in the industry,
Right?
Stuff. And I just found an article that I'm not going to read, but it says that Grant Morrison has come out and he has identified as non-binary and has been for 50 years. Now, all I'm saying is that I think the Powerhouse and stuff like that, if that's what they're looking for, of course there's not going to be a talented Powerhouse because that has nothing to do with talent to bring in. I mean, we're looking at the era where you got a lot of, when the guy who's writing Fantastic Four at Marvel has 2 or 3 other projects at Image and stuff that he's publishing. You know what I mean? That
right.
kind of tells
I'm just saying you're picking something specific to the moment.
That I think adds to it. Yeah. But it's been going on for so long. I think it's taking
I think no matter what the moment, and if the moment changes, that steep corporate structure will still filter out the creative powerhouses.
It's already done. It's already done it to 1 or 2 people. But like I said, I'm not out to be that kind of guy.
And there's tons of people who would have made it, who would have become creative powerhouses, but the corporate structure and there's the needs of all these people up on the top of the corporate structure that conflict with being a creative powerhouse.
Well, see, there's one person, every time we mention his name, the show goes off the rails, but there's a guy who was losing it at whatever for reason at Marvel, jumped over to DC, and it's just been disappointing since then. And I think he's not the powerhouse he was. He may have been one of the last ones, you know. Jeff Johns pretty much is out of the comics. You know, he was on the creative end of producing and writing. I think
that's the problem, though, with we're never making an artist a star again and trying to make the writers a creative powerhouse, which they made them a marketing powerhouse to some extent. But it turns out it is really difficult for a writer to be a creative powerhouse because comics are such a visual medium that they need a really good artist.
I think we've done the thing again where we're having 2 different conversations because you're in the business, you know these people, you know the behind stuff. I'm the audience. I buy the stuff. I like hearing the stories behind the stuff. And I know as an audience member, I want to see merit, good writing, all that stuff. You know, Sal Buscema.
Right.
We were on track with Sal Buscema. He did this, and then he blossomed as that, and he got that style, and he had a downgrade.
But my point is, artists at Marvel and DC can only get as good as Sal Buscema. That's the line.
There we go. Okay.
That was my point. Is you can at today's Marvel and DC, you can only get as good as Sal Buscema. Not in terms of being a creative powerhouse. In that if you're a creative powerhouse, you're not going to make it. So all the art, I mean, if you look at Marvel and DC art now, it's pretty good. I mean, across the board, they got some talented people.
Sometimes.
They got some.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah.
Sometimes.
What was that?
Sometimes,
yeah. But there's a lot of talented people working. Like, if you look at...
there's a lot of talented people who should be getting more work.
Right. Well, there's more people that have entered the business... over the past 20, 30 years, too. You know,
and now that
DC's see a lot of parallels with the music business.
Yeah, and DC's cut their line again. You know,
I think a lot of this.
If you look at House of X, Powers of X, Marvel's premier thing from last winter. Now, who wrote that one? Fraction.
Don't know.
I can't even name the artists. I tried to read. The artists were extremely talented.
Right.
If you look at those artists, who I can't even name, we can't even name because no one can name artists anymore.
Alan Davis is still kicking. That's all I know. I know he pops up at Marvel every now and then. That's it.
I'm not even talking guys like Alan. I'm talking about new creative powerhouse.
No,
Alan Davis isn't even creative power. To me, Alan Davis is another B. He's an A-level talent, but he's a B-level creative powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing too is a lot of these guys have figured out they can make more money outside of comics.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Exactly. That's enough. Once again, they get filtered out by the corporate structure. That's part of the filtering process.
Kind of boils back down to when DC.
And let's take a look at. Okay, just let me finish here. Sorry,
Steranko.
That's fine.
Steranko.
Let me finish with the House of X.
Let's take a look back at Brubaker.
Right.
Brubaker was saving his best ideas for when he was famous enough that he could go back to being an indie, and now he had an established fan base.
See, I don't even know if that's saving your best ideas, but it's certainly not being a creative powerhouse.
I think he's saving his most original ideas, maybe. You know what I mean?
I'm sure he was coming up with the best ideas he could for Captain America. Did he write that?
Yeah.
Brubaker? And if you read that, it's okay. I mean, but his best ideas for Captain America might not equal his best ideas for graphic novel with, Sean Phillips. That's what it comes down. When I hear people say they're saving their best idea, I don't know if it might be true. They might have some ideas that they put in a book and said, I'm not going to give these to Marvel. I mean,
I'm pretty sure that espionage series he did with Steve Epting.
Oh, yeah, that was really good. Velvet,
yeah. I'm pretty sure some of those ideas could have worked in Captain America with Sharon.
Maybe, but that would be a stretch. I'm like, you were right in that those ideas could have worked for if they wanted to make a Sharon Carter series. He could, but there was no reason to make a Sharon Carter series. There have been really motivated to.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's been artists and writers going back to the '60s who admitted they kept an idea to themselves.
Oh yeah,
because of what was going on. OMAC if they treated Kirby better, OMAC may not have been OMAC, but OMAC came from the idea of a Captain America in the future. You know what I mean?
I just think that when I hear the phrase "somebody's saving their best ideas for indie stuff," I don't think it's as simple as that. That's all.
It's an interesting idea. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you have artists who flat out said that they're not giving their you've had writers say they have saved things and then given to Marvel.
Oh yeah,
an image. I think that's what we're
does happen, but I still think it's not as simple as saving because they still have to come up with good ideas to keep their job. So they're trying their best to come up with good ideas, but they don't necessarily want to give every idea to them.
I think this is more of the spirit of the concept of this is an original idea. I'm going to keep it for myself. Is that what we're getting at, Paolo, a little bit?
Well, I think I would assume.
I think he was kind of saying too that maybe Brubaker didn't. I think Brubaker did his best work, did as best as he could for Marvel. Because sometimes when you hear someone say they're saving, you get the thought that they're not doing their best. They were doing their best,
right? And you would think in a perfect world, if you're going to do your own independent stuff, that you would put more passion into it.
Doing
just
your
because
best
it's
for
the
Marvel,
nature of the beast.
Right. Doing your best for Marvel might not equal doing your best for yourself, but that's not a criticism, or that's just life kind of thing.
Some of the other things that add to thinking like that is you've seen the other side of this, where a writer flat out said they didn't want my idea, so I took this from DC, went to Marvel, and did Kraven's Last Stand. This is the Batman story. Autumn Lands, Battle Pope, Battle Boy from Paul Pope, Autumn Lands, Kurt Busiek. Those are rejected Commandees stories.
Right.
So you see them say, "This is where it came from. Here's what I wanted to do." Sometimes you can get like an Astro City or an Ed Brubaker. I've seen things where this could have worked with another character just because you're aware of it.
They were trying their best to make the idea work for. Yeah. But it got rejected. So it's like I just don't want to leave the impression that Brubaker wasn't trying his best on Captain America, even if.
I don't think he was saying that though. I mean, I get where you're coming from.
I just think that phrase says that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that Paolo was saying that, but I think that phrase says that.
I got you.
Yeah. No, I imagine that maybe that the way that Velvet was structured, that I'm not saying that it was going to be a Sharon Carter series, because obviously it doesn't completely work. But there are some things there that it could have used, not in the Sharon Carter series, but as a Sharon Carter plot line in Captain America. And then
Fallen Angel.
Because of course you don't have a completely written outline of what you want to do. You have some ideas and think, okay, you write down some ideas, and then you're not Captain America anymore. Those things that I maybe could have done with Sharon Carter, maybe I'm going to develop this and create my own thing.
But to get back to House of X, Powers of X, and Sal Buscema. I don't know. Did you guys even get to look at House of X, Powers of X? Like I said, I took it out of the library, tried to read it, couldn't make it through it.
No interest in the mutant stuff
But
at all.
There were some good ideas, but the execution starts going all over the place.
Execution.
But there's no way you can say these artists are untalented. They're really talented. Their artwork is highly illustrative, but they are in no way, shape, or form creative powerhouses.
Yeah, I don't think that any of these guys would consider himself a cartoonist.
No.
And all the other guys did. McFarlane is a cartoonist.
And these guys, what they're really, really good at is illustration. In terms of illustration, literally means to show. So what they're really good at is showing you Wolverine standing there with every seam on his costume and his face in perfect 3D with beautiful lines on it. The coloring perfectly molded around his body, making it look. They're very good at illustrating these comics. They're very good at showing you exactly what that object is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they're not really that good at making you feel anything. They're not.
They're extremely competent. Yeah, I describe it as extremely competent, but they have no style, no flair, no identity.
Yeah, I mean, and they're real. It's like you can't say their talent is bad. Their talent at drawing is so good, but it doesn't. But they'll never go beyond Sal Buscema creative powerhouse wise. So to me, that's what Marvel and DC are now. They're the best they can shoot for is Sal Buscema, who I like,
right?
But he's not the best of the best. No one talks about Sal Buscema when they talk about the best comic book creators of the last 50 years. He doesn't get a mention.
Right.
And I think that's one of the problems with Marvel and DC now, is the corporate structure has so filtered out just the whole concept of a creative powerhouse.
Sure.
It's just gone. So that we'll never see a Frank Miller coming out of there again. We'll never see a Walt Simonson, who to me is I don't know, he's at the same level, sort of creative powerhouse as those other guys, but he is a creative powerhouse. Maybe one notch below the other big names. So it's just, but there's no one. We not only do we not know the names of current Marvel and DC artists, there's no chance we'll learn them.
Right,
because
and
none of them stand out.
And all the artists you mentioned, like Walt and Gil Kane and all these other ones, they all have their own style.
Right.
And that's really not something you're going to see in this corporate structure anymore.
No, the style is
it's a house.
realism.
It's a house style.
It's not even a house style. It's the idea of a house style is kind of wrong.
Yeah, it's more of an industry style.
But, I mean, it kind of gets the point.
No, it's not even that. All a house style is freelancers being smart. Because what fans call a house style is, Rob Liefeld is really popular and getting a lot of work. If I make my work more look like Liefeld's, it'll catch an editor's eye. And an editor's sitting there looking through the pile going, wow, Rob Liefeld is selling a lot of work. Oh, this guy looks a little like Rob Liefeld. I think I'll try putting him on the book. And that's really what a house style is. It's just freelancers molding the work to what sells and what editors are buying.
Yeah, Rich Buckler and Fantastic Four.
And nobody has to ask for it. Mm-hmm. That's why there is no house style. Nobody says, Stan Lee might say, draw more, look at Jack stuff, draw more like Jack. They might actually say that, but there's no kind of official house style. It just becomes a style because that's what's selling, so everybody rushes there. Or else the editors start looking for guys who draw like that because that's what's selling. So it's when people, house style is something we kind of impose on them in hindsight. It doesn't really exist in the present tense.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's like even looking at, let me see if it's still over here. This DC.
Oh, is that the one that's done by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez?
This DC Future State.
Oh no.
All this drawing is real nice on it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with.
Getting back to the cover there, all right, you see how the superheroes are like emanating from a certain point. They're all coming out rushing.
Right.
What were they all doing all clumped together 5 seconds ago?
In one perspective. But all these sketches, all these drawings are really nice art. But and this is another thing. This is all, computer graphics, backgrounds, and 3D perspective, and 3D modeling figures, and it's all highly illustrative, and looks real. So you can't look at this and say this is bad art, but in terms of creativity of the art, it's B+. That's the best you're going to get. And you can see stuff like this. If you look at that Batman there with his little hand, that's because this artist probably used a 3D model as reference, and there's no foreshortening in 3D models. So that's exactly what with Jack Kirby, he'd have the hand coming right out at you.
Right.
And a giant hand. But with 3D models, you don't get foreshortening. So you end up with Batman's hand completely disappearing because it's still 3D model size.
And they don't even use those as a reference. If they're using crowd scenes and the characters are just standing together, it's copy-paste.
Well, I also think one of the problems in the modern comics industry, too, is you have so many people working in the industry now that are only influenced by superhero comics.
Yeah. Well, that's who they went looking for to draw these comics.
Yeah.
It's like that's who they hired. C.B. Cebulski, way back in 2002, when he became new talent coordinator, that was his job, to go around the world and find guys who could draw like this for cheap. And that's what comics are filled with them now. And if you look at this Catwoman here, that's a nicely rendered Catwoman. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Except it's...
But it looks like every other Catwoman you've seen.
Looks like every other Catwoman.
Yeah.
It's B+. Everything is B+. There's nothing... I mean, look at this nice Superman drawing here. Nothing wrong with it. There's some nice color, nice modeling in the color. It's B+. That's the best it doesn't make you feel anything.
Right.
It's just nicely illustrated. And there's nothing wrong with nicely illustrated, but it doesn't make you feel a punch like Frank Miller can make you feel a punch.
Right.
Even though Frank Miller's illustrations... What is this one? There's a Lemire interview in which he says he spent 5 or 6 hours in the Marvel Comics for 5 or 6 days. One of his own is.
Yeah, I pulled this up because this interview is referenced a lot with how people are shaping their opinions now. On
20 years ago, Kurt Busiek was saying the same thing about Astro City.
Right.
And Kurt Busiek is one of the few people working in the industry right now that can cause me to give a damn about superhero comics.
Right.
Because
Maestro's pretty good.
Yeah.
But like I said, that was my everybody sort of has a house style, but it's only a house style as we see it looking back. It's like it doesn't actually exist in the present tense because it's freelancers trying to get work is really what a house style is. If I draw more like that guy who's getting work, I can get work.
Yeah,
that's how what we call a house style develops.
Yeah. Just for clarification, the house style that Valiant, that Jim Shooter called it, was he wanted people to still draw the comics in the style of the old Gold Key and Dell comics, that Magnus they came from. That's what he was going for in that house style. So.
Can you imagine if the interiors on those old comics were half as good as the covers were? They would have been fantastic.
Those fantastic green skin Dr. Solar, I don't know, acrylic oil paintings. Yeah, they were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But the best they could come up with was Russ Manning, and he was B-.
Russ Manning. I could never figure out what the heck robot kung fu was. Punching robots? Why does he teach someone else to punch?
When you're a
kid, kung fu.
I'm with you now. Now I'm like, what?
Right.
But when you're a kid, it makes perfect sense. You know what I mean?
I was 10 years old and had no clue what robot kung fu was.
But it makes
rock'em sock'em robots, man.
He can punch a metal cylinder and it falls apart, but if I do, it doesn't? Why doesn't he teach me that?
Well, it's kind of like the old Superman series when he'd stick his chest out and you'd take a hail of bullets, machine gun bullets straight to the chest. But when you ran out of bullets and threw the pistol at his head, he would duck.
And this does have to do with comics, but I remember the first time I saw Spirited Away, if you know Spirited Away.
Yeah.
There's a part in the movie where you have to hold your breath while you're crossing a bridge. To a little kid, that makes perfect sense, and it made me think about comics when I was little. There was things that didn't need to be explained. It just made sense. That's a rule, So, yeah.
That's a great movie, by the way.
And this thought came into my head watching Sleepy Reader's pull list this week. He got some Immortal Hulk special. And Immortal Hulk is I've read some of it digitally, and it's a pretty good book. And lots of people like Immortal Hulk. It's one of the better reviewed comics of Marvel. I don't know if you guys have read any of it, but there have been a couple of times when I've wanted to buy issues of the Immortal Hulk, but I haven't because, and I said this is a problem with Marvel and DC also. Is that the physical comics from Marvel and DC are so crappy.
Yes. Quality of what you're talking about is the quality.
I mean, of the physical product, not of the comic. I mean, the physical
product. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think back to the old days in comics when comics were on newsprint with a color cover, and the whole benefit of that was, even though the printing was crappy, they were cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You could print the stuff cheap and make money on it. And, we didn't know the printing was that crappy because it was always that crappy. But now, and then they started putting out in trades, and if you wanted to buy, spend your money on a trade and better paper, woohoo, good for you. But nowadays, it's completely upside down. In that, instead of comics being like it's one thing if the Immortal Hulk was printed crappy and was cheap. But now, if you're buying monthly issues, which I do, you're buying comics in their most expensive form.
Sure.
Trade paper, collected editions are cheaper. Special edition hardcovers are cheaper than the physical comics. So it's like, I can't buy Immortal Hulk. If I want to buy Immortal Hulk, I'll get a collected edition sometime down the road, whenever. Which usually for me means I never get it. Right. But just the fact that, like, Marvel comics especially are so, the physical product is so crappy, not even in terms of the content, makes me not buy them.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I had a friend send me this newscast. I don't know where the kid's from. It might be Pennsylvania or something, right? But a 10-year-old boy actually got a spot on the local news because during COVID, instead of playing video games and all this stuff, he looked at his pet, what do you call those little crabs, a hermit crab, and he started drawing a comic, and then he whipped out the comic, and he somewhere he got it published in this format. I don't know what company he went through, but just him flipping through it, it was a better quality than the floppies you get today. But then they showed him how he's doing this comic, and he's got a freaking program that he draws on there. It's, I'm sure the writing is his, but everything is there. That's why he's able to do it, and then he's like selling them. And but the quality, not the story. I don't know about the insides, but like you were saying, the quality of the physical product I don't know where they got it from, what site that published it for them, but it was so much better. It was like this. It was like glossy. It was well bound. You know, it was smaller, and the page you could see him flipping through it, and it was put together well. Yeah.
This is. I was doing some work with Terry Cavanaugh, who's an old editor from Marvel. This is a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. He's been getting together a company that does custom comics. And this is I think it's a 24-page comic that he put I did all the production on. But this comic that was, published at a small place in Montana, I think, is a better comic than Marvel puts out. Now, sure, this costs more because it was only a couple hundred copies, but the economies of scale should be able to make you make good physical comics. But Marvel chooses not to.
Exactly right.
You see, I've never shown this, but this is a comic that my wife ordered and kind of wrote herself about us for my birthday present.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so that's why it started making me aware of this stuff, right?
Yes.
And she wrote it. They had a program that already had, you made, you had to choose what you look like, like an old video game, I guess. But just seeing that kid with that book, I mean, I was happy for him, but I'm like, who's doing that? Because I could do this, whoever's printing this stuff. So apparently it just blows my mind. You can get these little companies that make a better physical quality book than what the big companies are doing,
I remember hearing a story from inside Marvel 5-6 years ago. I can't even remember when Marvel they downgraded their paper. If you remember, I can't even remember when it was. Sometime in the 2010s, maybe.
Is it the one you could see through? The covers you could see through? Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. Anyway, they downgraded it. It was. I had just heard the story. I can't even remember where I heard it from. Because it was all the, big wigs up there looking to make comics cheaper, looking to do this, and they've got this new pay. They're all excited that they figured out a way, to make 10 cents more on a comic or whatever.
Right.
And then the comics came out, and there was nothing but complaints, of course, on the internet and stuff, and complaints everywhere. And then this person was in the meeting with them, and it was like, "Oh my God, what are all these complaints?" And she was like, "You didn't think the fans would notice we made everything cheaper?" It never occurred to them.
See,
it never occurred to them that everybody would notice.
And then like I said, on this side of it, of the people who actually buy the product, there's been maybe two or three of those times that's something like that's happened over the last 2 decades. But the one that I remember, and I think it's the same one, is Quesada. Joe Quesada just put out this big interview or statement where he said, "There's no better time to be buying comics. Look at the paper quality we use and all this stuff." And he was bragging on the quality of the product, if you will.
Right.
Then it was probably less than 6 months later they did that. That was when the big uproar happened because Quesada just said that.
Well, getting back to what Jared was talking about, I noticed this working in a customer service job. No matter how minuscule a change you may make on the most obscure thing in the world, it could be the amount of varnish that's being used on a staple in the in the printing. Somebody's going to notice.
Change. There's people that just don't like change, period. And I think we've all had something that had hit us like that, to be honest.
But when you lower the quality of your product,
and the price goes up, or it's the same price.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's a consumer market you're dealing with, and that's across the board on most stuff. Yeah.
These markers right here, Copic markers, the leading illustration marker out there.
Oh, Jared's fancy. He gets the Copic. Yeah, I see.
If you wave it around a little bit more, it looks like a lightsaber.
Woo! You can refill them. 25 milliliters refill bottle, $6.99. They just redesigned their refill bottles. Yeah. They're now 12 milliliters for $6.99. It's like
and people notice that stuff. I know. Being a musician,
I'm now looking into getting some Dick Blick markers because
I was just going to ask you because I know a lot of artists and I know several that if you change ink, pen, whatever, paper quality, what have you,
Let me tell you about the
They don't like
legend
it.
of. Let me tell you about the legend of Snowpake.
Okay.
Snowpake, all through the early '90s. Anytime one of the generation of artists who came before me was up there, they'd tell you about Snowpake, which was the best whiteout ever,
Okay.
and it was made for artists for working with black and white. You don't know how many people I heard bemoan they couldn't get Snowpake anymore. So that happens all the time and Winsor Newton Series 7 number
Brushes.
3 brushes. This is the Raphael.
Mhm.
You don't know how many times I've heard people complain over the years about the quality of those, because those are the main inking brushes every inker uses. I've heard the complaint, and the quality of them has gone down.
Right.
So it's like, I remember when I first started, I'd hear it, in the early '90s when I started using one. I was like, oh, it's fine to me. I mean, because I didn't know any better. Now I'm using one. I'm like, oh, this one sucks. Oh, this one sucks. Oh, this one sucks. And they're $30 a brush.
Yeah. I get it.
I also see companies sneaking by with just over 20 pages.
Yeah.
Some cheap crap. I thought there should be two stories per issue.
Yeah. That's all Marvel comics are 20 pages an issue now.
Bought a Savage Dragon trade from the late 90s. You can only read it once. Half the pages fell out while I was reading it. They came out like notebook paper, worst production quality ever. A lot of that's happening with a lot of first runs of Absolute editions if I go by YouTube.
Yeah.
But I've got 2 trades I was like really glad to find cheap. And it was in Salem, Scott. And it's the Trial of Galactus story and whatever the Peter David McFarlane Hulk story was. And those things are fantastic with the quality, I think, of what's made. Yeah. It's
I know at one time, this is several years ago, that Dark Horse had kind of a reputation for some of their trades, falling apart. But it seems like they fixed that now.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I got about 4 or 5 more minutes, man. You got another topic there, Jared, or anything? I don't want to cut it short, We got some good stuff going on. This last hour has been fantastic,
Yeah. I'm gonna have to come up with a word for the Sal Buscema line, like the Mendoza line, where no one can cross it now at Marvel. No one can cross the Sal Buscema line in terms of being a creative powerhouse. They just don't exist.
Instead of the Marshall Doctrine, now you can have the Buscema Doctrine. So.
See, I keep that little hope that there's going to be like this little company or this one person who breaks the code. And all of a sudden, it's like DC in the 60s trying to figure out how is Marvel doing this with their sloppy artists. And I'm waiting for I keep waiting like somebody or something's going to happen where we get the same thing. You know what I mean?
Well, I think any creative powerhouses are going to come out of the indie stuff, but they're not really set up for it.
Right.
They don't.
That's what I'm trying to say. Something out of the blue that just like.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has the means of distribution to do that.
Right. And they don't have the means to like Frank Miller hung around for a few years before he got his chance on Daredevil.
Well, like I said, a lot of it is just an optimistic wishing. But I mean, if you really think about it, there are web comics that only exist on the internet. There's no printed pages.
My web comic only exists on the internet. There's
exactly. There you go.
And then there's some like Phil Folio where he does Girl Genius, where he does a certain quantity of stuff on the web. And then once it gets a certain level, then he'll publish it in print.
I'm not going to go dig through my wife's stuff, but on Facebook, she found this comic strip, and it's just aliens who are taking human situations, but they talk like aliens.
Yeah, that's a real popular one.
That dude makes the trades himself, and it made the New York top 10 or whatever, top.
But none of those guys are. I mean, it's all nice. They're making good work, and hopefully they're making a good living. But they all find a niche.
Yeah, my thing is I see the tools for it to happen, but the internet's huge. Like I said, it's an optimistic. I'm realistic about it, but there's just this optimistic hope. You know what I mean? That it'd be cool to see something like that happen. I totally get realistically that they're going to have a lot of stars align. I get that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tommy Bagley says Don Perlin is on that stuff. See, I would put Don Perlin and Bob Hole below, because I put Sal Buscema as the best of the B+ artists, because he evolved his style over years and was still doing good work 30 years. But yeah, I'd put they're not creative powerhouses.
Yeah, and I'll be damned.
And Don Perlin is highly dependent on who his anchor is in order for his work to stand out. Now, in Bob Hall, he has absolutely no personal style, which is his big problem. Because I was looking at his work on the Squadron Supreme, and man, he's got some very interesting storytelling techniques in there, but they don't. It just doesn't stand out.
Like I
A thing about Bob Hall is after meeting him is that he's a playwright who did comics on the side. Is what we're finding out that he had other things. Go ahead, Jared. I saw you.
Listen, Sal Buscema to me is the ultimate B+ artist. He's the best of them. He's the best of the B+ artists who isn't a creative powerhouse. And I think that's what most artists are today. We have, at Marvel and DC at least. If you're a creative powerhouse, you've got to show it somewhere else.
I was just thinking I could almost say that for Kevin Nolan too.
Yeah.
What about John Romita Jr.? I mean, he's ended up tagging himself with a lot of big names: Claremont, Jeff Johns, stuff like that.
I'd say he's one of those B+ guys. He's not a creative powerhouse.
I mean, you got me thinking. I've already thought of 10 artists I could bring up into this, but I really want to think about them.
Creative powerhouses are fairly rare.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you remember when Romita Jr. Tried doing an Image comic?
Oh yeah, Gray, was that his?
I don't even remember what it was called.
Oh, I got to
It was
look this
mediocre.
up. I'm having this thing where I feel like I should know, but I don't know.
Like Will Eisner, creative powerhouse. I'd even say
yeah.
Dave Sim is a creative powerhouse.
He was at one
his
time.
influence. Yeah. His influence on everybody was big. To go out and create their own stuff, and he created a lot of stuff with Cerebus.
He actually, to me, his biggest thing is that I feel like he was that guy who showed people you can do this in the indie market or whatever, so they did it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I think that made him a creative powerhouse too.
right, because he influenced people, and people felt like. Wait a minute, sorry, man. I'm looking up the images of John Romita Jr. Image. I'm trying to. All that's coming up is kick ass.
I would define a creative powerhouse as somebody who not only creates a lot of his own stuff, but influences or leaves a lot of stuff behind for other people to create theirs, even if they're not creative powerhouses.
So just to be
Kirby,
sure,
of course, being the ultimate.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, just to be sure I'm on the same. I know the parameters here. I know the rules of what you're bringing up. Where would John Byrne fall?
I would say he's a minor creative powerhouse.
Minor? John Byrne?
Yeah, maybe not. We could argue he's a creative powerhouse. If we were to rank them, I would not necessarily put him high.
John Byrne is so much in the mold of a traditional super comic book artist.
Yeah.
But he's creative. I think his lack of diversity probably is what.
Yeah, that's what keep. But if someone wants to say John Byrne is a creative powerhouse, I wouldn't argue too much with them.
I got you. Like I said, I'm just
the Brazilians only didn't never put creators' names on their comics,
right?
Except for two names. It was Frank Miller and John Byrne. If you put those names on the cover, people would buy them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also think people can be creative powerhouses for a minor amount of time. Oh, Jim Steranko. There we go. There's the ultimate creative powerhouse who's only creative for a small amount of time.
I would put Dave Stevens in that camp too.
Yeah, I would put Dave Cockrum in that camp. Because Dave Cockrum did a lot of stuff in the 70s that was very influential and created a lot of stuff. Including, of course, the X-Men. And
I was just thinking in terms of being prolific. That both Steranko and Dave Stevens had a huge impact with a very small body of work.
Right. Yeah. The Cockrum has an underrated impact.
What about P. Craig Russell? Where would you put him at?
Craig is one of the best artists that's ever worked in the industry.
He's a creative powerhouse, definitely. But he's more of an indie creative powerhouse, which means he's got a smaller footprint.
Right. Okay.
like indie creative powerhouses. I think I just by their very nature of it.
He has just enough influence to work on the projects he wants to work on.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I've got a whole shelf of these guys. That's why I'm showing you. Like, I think I've actually made a shelf of what you're talking about. But what about? Yeah, go ahead.
What Jerb was talking about, in terms of the way P. Craig Russell is that's most of the creators I like that are in that mold. Charles Betts, Mike Kaluta.
That's where I think I'm going with this. Exactly.
There were a lot more creative powerhouses in the 70s that Marvel encouraged it because their corporate structure was so shallow.
And this is the last one I'll ask about because, like, I've already pulled. I mean, I got a shelf of where I think, like what Scott was saying. I've got a shelf here. These guys are all on the same shelf over here, right? But Simonson and Mignola, where would you put them?
See, Simonson. I put as sort of a minor creative powerhouse. He created a lot of stuff.
Mike Mignola is a serious powerhouse these days.
I'm just checking on the parameters of what
I would say. I don't know enough of Mike Mignola's stuff because he's had like very little influence on my collecting. But I could see. I mean, he's got a whole Hellboy world in 2 movies.
Exactly.
I could easily see how someone would say.
Those are the 2 magic words that Con Sooth put there. Bernie writes.
Yeah, and then we got Frank Bruner getting brought up. Frank Bruner, J.H. Williams.
Yeah. I think some of these guys, like Bernie Wrightson, was a creative powerhouse for a short period of time.
See, this may be what.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing. I think this is the part where I'm like trying to figure out your parameters to stay on.
Right.
But
also, since I'm using the grade scale, we can have creative powerhouses at A plus, A minus too. If Bill Sienkiewicz is the best, I'm Bill Sienkiewicz. Sal Buscema is B plus when it comes to being an artist. Then I put the creative powerhouses in the A's.
Yeah. What I think I'm mixing it up with is that Simonson had that great Thor run that's still heralded today. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bernie Wrightson came in there and he's influenced artists and all, and he got their respect. So I think I'm mixing up. And then you got Buscema, who was like, "Give me a script, and I'll give you some pipe pencils." And a good story.
I don't know that John Buscema was a creative powerhouse.
Okay.
I think he's once again an A-level talent, but B-level when it comes to being a creative powerhouse.
Yeah.
Marshall Rogers, he's close. But notice all these guys are 70s guys.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all Marvel guys. Because Marvel's corporate power structure was so shallow.
Yeah,
these creative powerhouses thrive.
Yeah, then Bernie, the only guy we really named from DC is Bernie. In my eyes, Bernie is DC. You know what I mean? Kaluta. Oh, yeah, that's right. I never realized it. Kaluta did a bunch of Conan covers.
But he did some work. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I got you.
Not as much.
And they all followed in Neil Adams' footsteps. Neil Adams was the guy, the creative powerhouse who broke through at DC. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, "Oh, we got to do some of the stuff Marvel is doing. These sort of auteur artists, creative powerhouses, are a good idea."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. A lot of these guys that we're still talking about are from the 70s. I think I'm adding their influence on other people and how a lot of their stuff.
Right. That's part of being a creative powerhouse is your influence on other people. You leave stuff behind for other people.
Yeah.
Even if it's just your drawing style.
Yeah, to me, that makes it elevate them when we're still talking about works that they did that's still relevant. You know, I mean, they're still talking.
Barry Windsor-Smith would be another example of that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. I think it's where you're using Sal Buscema as the stick, I can't think of the word.
He's the only level that he's the best level comics can rise to these days in terms of being a creative powerhouse.
Okay, I got you.
That's what I mean.
Okay, I got you now. Okay.
Yeah. We're never that like Barry. We will not see a Barry Windsor-Smith level creative powerhouse at Marvel and DC right now. Man, Jim Starlin, I think you can put him in. Listen, so many of these 70s guys were, even if they were only briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Jim Starlin is still getting his stuff sort of
Right,
don't know
right.
what I'm looking
But,
for
well,
here.
you can make Kirby is an A+
We
level
lost
creative
Paolo.
powerhouse.
Yeah.
Did I?
You can make guys A and A- too. So if you want to put George, you can put George Perez as an A- level creative powerhouse if you want. If you want to put him in that category, which I think you can. Marshall Rogers too, and some of them could be creative powerhouses for a brief time, because I think part of being a creative powerhouse is the corporate structure has no place for you, and you leave comics.
Where would you put somebody like Matt Wagner?
I'd put him in the indie creative powerhouse category,
Well, sure.
where
Okay.
those guys, it's a little harder to judge because they don't always, because the nature of indie stuff, you don't leave stuff behind for other people.
This topic is just fascinating me because like it can still be so subjective. You know,
The reason
you're going to have me
brought up
thinking.
Matt,
You're going to have me thinking.
Yeah, the reason I brought up Matt Wagner, he's done just enough stuff for DC that has some effect there, but the majority of it is in.
But people will be copying Mage and Grendel for ages.
Yeah.
Right.
People will be making their own Mage and Grendel.
Yeah, and then you've got his writing chops on Sandman Mystery Theater, not heralded as much. Don't get me wrong, but when
Sandman Mystery Theater was really good.
That's what I mean. When people get a hold of that, just the writing on that's what makes them. They remember it, and they're there for Yeah.
And he's done enough variety of stuff that his career has spanned 3 decades now, and he's done such a variety of stuff that he's easy to put. But like I said, the indie creative powerhouse category, even though he's done mainstream stuff, it's just a little more tricky.
Okay, people are just throwing out names.
Yeah, I'd put Tim Truman in that same kind of category.
Yeah,
Mike Flug. Flug has been and done so much. Flug has been putting on a lot of stuff on his Facebook page that's on sale on eBay, and his storyboards for like Dark Crystal. Thing. I mean, and then Bakshi's putting up his stuff he did for Wizards and stuff. That's why I think, this may be something that I'm just going to have to like back up throughout listen to you guys.
I'm thinking about Frank Quitely now too, and I don't know, because I think it's just his drawing style that everybody ate.
Frank Quitely, to me, and I got a whole book of his stuff that I got at all. I mean, they come out with a whole book studying his art.
Oh yeah, I like his stuff.
Great art.
He's the only one of that thin line style I really like. Jupiter Rising, Jupiter's Legacy was really good.
Well, I go back to his stuff like Earth 2 with Morrison and probably something before that. To me, he started out looking a lot like Frank Miller without the shadows, and then he turned into something much better. You actually watch him progress. Yeah, that's what I saw at least. I mean, I'll revisit it, but his Earth 2 stuff. When I was looking at that, I saw some lines in that I
also notice most of the creative powerhouses we name are artists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Paul Smith, man. Yeah,
I don't know if I'd put him. If you're going to put him up as a creative powerhouse, he's got to be a minor one. Because he hasn't done. I don't know how much influence Paul Smith. I mean, I love his stuff. I buy his stuff. But I don't know. He just made one thing. Besides the category of creative powerhouse, there's also the category of talented. Like he's an A-level sort of comic book artist. You can be an A-level comic book artist and a C-level creative powerhouse.
But the small, that's what I mean. Every these guys are subjective. We can sit here and talk all day back and forth. But like with Paul Smith, what I would say is that he was on X-Men for I want to say less than a year. I might be wrong.
Right.
And then he did the Golden Age, and whether if you were into that stuff, but the small amount of work that he's done has been amazing on how it influenced people.
But the distinction I'm making is, to me, he's an A-level artist. He's not an A-level creative powerhouse. I'm making a distinction between those two things.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not butting heads with you. I'm just saying, the more you get into this, the more I'm thinking. People are throwing out names: Truman, Mike Grell.
Mike Truman. I mean, Tim Truman. I think you can make an argument as a A minus.
Leave up Terabus's comment for a second.
Where am I at here? Which one? Mount Rushmore, Craig Russell, or the Mount Rushmore?
Craig Russell. His Norse
yeah.
mythology book is fantastic, but I've preached about this book in the past. The Ring cycle he did for Wagner's Ring
Oh yeah.
is some of the best comics that's ever been done by anybody. It is as good as anybody else.
Yeah, and I'm that.
I want to point out though that Norse mythology book as a physical book is a piece of crap. If it wasn't Craig Russell doing it, I wouldn't be buying it.
Didn't you say, aren't they using like the same paper stock on the cover?
Yeah, it's a self-covered one, and it's really thin.
I hate that.
And I do this with very few people that I met at conventions and stuff, but I was a fan of Craig Russell, but after I met him, now I love his stuff. It is so cool to meet somebody like that.
He's been consistently good for many years, and he's been getting better. And that's scary, as good as he is. Yeah,
most artists should have several famous, influential runs to even get in them for. Okay,
like Howard Chaykin, I'd say is probably an A minus. And once again, he also follows the path of so many of those '70s creative power, and he left comics for 15 years.
Well, yeah, it's because he could make more money writing for TV.
Yeah. But I think that's part of being a creative powerhouse.
I'll tell you what,
you end up having options.
Yeah, Bronze Age are my favorite books, and it's all these guys seeing them, they're at the ground level for some of them. Yeah.
And Consu, Neil Adams, we talked about him, but he was like the first creative powerhouse at DC. Because they were trying to one thing, we'll go back to DC in the 50s and 60s. Can we think of there's just not that many creative powerhouses because of the corporate structure, and I think we're back to that corporate structure.
I agree with you.
Yeah, you say that, and when I think Marvel in the early days and stuff, I think nepotism. I can't help it.
That's fine.
Yes, Hope Services. I feel influence part is the key factor. Yeah,
that's what I was saying earlier.
Right. You can be a powerhouse for a short period of time too. Like a couple of those 70 guys we mentioned who were here, they had influence. Like I said, I think even Bernie Wrightson was a creative powerhouse for a fairly short period of time because he left comics.
Well, Bernie's, I was going to say he's an interesting topic because he has as much influence outside of comics and illustration as he does within comics itself.
I'm going to bring up a name, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I've collected some of her stuff, and overall, I think she's capable of doing some good stuff. She's a lot of a hack. It's a lot of other stuff. What do you think about Gail Simone? Will she be a power? We're switching to a writer.
Honestly,
I've never liked her writing. So if you want to convince me she's a creative powerhouse, she got a long way to go.
There we go.
I think her writing is subpar.
Believe me, I have my reasons for asking, but I'm not going to get into them. I'll spare it.
I've never been able to make it through a Gail Simone comic. It's not for me. Yeah, Art Adams, though, to me, he's not a creative powerhouse. He's an A-level artist, though. It's like, once again, I'm making this distinction between artists and creative powerhouse.
I could kick myself for not bringing this name up. I really could. Jeff Darrow.
I was going to mention when I saw Quietly, he kind of reminded me of Jeff Darrow with
I'm putting Jeff Darrow as an A-level artist, but not a creative powerhouse.
There we go. Now, okay, I'm coming around here because that's
you're understanding my concept. Which is what I'm saying at Marvel and DC right now. You might still have some A-level artists. I mean, this stuff is good. The Knight's drawings, but there are no creative powerhouses.
Mm-hmm. Ivan Rice. I wonder if he's still doing. Was he still doing work? Ivan Rice was one of those guys that I thought was going to go places.
These guys are all. There's nothing wrong with them. Like I said, they can even be A-level artists. There's good stuff coming out from Marvel and DC.
Ariel Olivati, I can't think of his name. He did the
Space Ghost. Yeah, he did the Space Ghost series.
I thought he was going to be something. Pascal Ferry, I kind of thought he was going to come up. I don't think you didn't like Pascal.
No.
Okay. No problem.
I don't know what he's doing these days, but I like Travis. I don't know how to pronounce his last
name.
Charest. I liked his stuff a lot, but I liked his
Travis Charest. Right?
Yeah, I liked his stuff better, his independent stuff better than the superhero stuff.
I think I still have that Flash annual that came out of Armageddon. Oh my God! Hey, it's getting late, guys. I need food. The big crossover they messed up because everybody figured out it was Captain Atom. Or something, Armageddon 2001 or something. Anyway, Travis Charest did this great flashing of my whole point. And then to see him on Dark Stars and then to see him do his real artwork outside of comics blew me away. Yeah.
Adam Hughes.
Wally Wood, I'd say, probably qualifies as a creative powerhouse.
Wally Wood.
Creative powerhouse emerged with the current limited comic. I think it has less to do with the current limited fan base and more to do with Marvel and DC's corporate structure. But it is tough, as we were saying here, for an indie comics creative powerhouse to emerge. It really is, because they don't have the opportunity to leave stuff behind for people. Well, they don't have the opportunity.
A lot of those guys do too, like limited series, so they don't have a continuing series to keep themselves in the public eye, like Jeff Smith, for example.
Right. Adams was just a new guy. What was that?
I just went blank on Paul. I can't believe this. I just went blank on this guy's work. I just went blank.
Paul Gulacy?
I had 2 books I was going to bring up, and I just went blank. Oh.
I would not call Paul Gulacy a creative powerhouse, but an A- level artist.
Let me tell you something. I cannot believe it's been over 20 years since I discovered Ladron. It blows my mind. But every
time, I'm not sure Ladron is that influent, especially now that he's mostly working for the European market.
Yeah.
Every time I see Ladron, I think Mobius.
We got David Mack. See, there was David Mack, and who's the other guy I'm thinking of? He did SHI.
Billy
Tucci. Yeah.
I don't think he's well known enough.
Billy Tucci told me, I was talking to him at HeroesCon one time, and he had a story that he wanted to pitch to DC, which I don't know if it ever get done, which basically it was a World War II story. Okay. And I was sitting here listening, I was like, that's the best sounding story I've heard in a freaking long time. Why does somebody at DC not jump on this? And it's just not going to sell to a
Scott, tell me you told me the story, because I don't remember talking to him to have him tell me the same thing. You probably told me.
The story was there was a battle towards the end of World War II.
Yeah,
basically the war they pretty much knew where
you told me this.
They knew that the Germans were going to lose. Okay. And there was a story where they had a bunch of scientists somewhere behind German lines. And there was a group of American commandos that were sent in to get them out of there. And the German, not the SS, but the straight line German soldiers realized, hey, we're kind of on the wrong side of history here. We're not doing the right thing. And they actually helped the Americans get the guys out of there. And the way Bill told this story, it's like, I want to see this comic tomorrow. If you did this as Kickstarter, I would pitch it right now. But DC just wasn't interested. It just kind of broke my heart. You know?
Yeah, you told me the story, because I was like, I know I did not talk to Tucci at a convention and hear this.
Yeah.
And that term, wrong side of history, blows my mind. History just anyway. I'm like, history just happens. There's no goal. You know?
Right. Oh, I get it. Right.
Here we go. Darwin Cook.
I'll tell you. Darwin Cook.
He was.
Darwin Cook is everything that I think is good about superhero comics.
To me, what's weird about Darwin Cook to me is I don't like looking at his art in terms of it just sort of being an illustration. He's too much of a Bruce Timm clone for me. But when I actually read his comics, I love them. Mm-hmm. They're great. He is such a great storyteller with his comics.
Somewhere on the line, I was wishing Mike Wieringo would get with Darwin Cook. You know,
but what did Darwin Cook create?
The Batman Beyond opening on the show.
Wasn't that? I mean, it to me, Darwin Cook's in Bruce Timm's shadow a lot, so I don't know.
I don't think Darwin Cook actually created.
I mean, they both.
I don't think I know Darwin Cook's enough to decide if he's a creative powerhouse or not. I don't know.
Darwin Cook had a way of stripping things down, doing a lot of research, and he brought the best out of every character he touched.
If you would think of...
I like Parker a lot. I like
Parker's good.
Like I said, I've liked everything I've read by Darwin Cook.
Yeah, it's like Darwin Cook has an art style that's similar to Bruce Timm's, but his approach is more like Alex Toth.
Yeah, his storytelling is terrific. His storytelling is A-level.
Yeah, for nothing else, if Darwin Cook had never done anything else other than the New Frontier, he would
I've
have
never read
cemented
that one.
himself,
So.
as my mind, as one of the best comic creators ever.
But is he a creative powerhouse or is he an A-level comics guy?
Well, he's no
That's the
longer
question.
around, so
He's definitely, we would definitely say Darwin Cook is an A-level at creating comics, but that doesn't make him an A-level creative powerhouse. That's the distinction I'm making. So I don't know.
Yeah. The New Frontier, I definitely would recommend you reading that, because the loser story he does before he even gets to the story. Well, it's one of my favorite pieces of comic book work ever. Like I was like, I didn't want any more. I wanted more loser stories out of it.
I hate to keep bringing this up, but everybody's always complaining what's wrong with modern comics. Like, read what Darwin Cook did and follow his lead.
Fair enough. Yep. Oh man. Okay. One more, and I'm gonna have to wrap this up, guys.
Okay. Oh, good question.
That's a good. I cannot ignore this one. So
I don't know their work enough. To me, Eastman and Laird are a fluke, an indie fluke.
Yeah, they're
in terms of what indie comic ever has much influence as the Turtles. Nothing. And it was that marketing guy who turned it into that.
This is the story of the. I mean, this is perfect for what I was trying to say, where I'm optimistic that something's going to come out of the blue. These guys did it in the 80s. You know what I mean? This is the story.
But it wasn't them.
Consciously, the story that I'm hoping repeats itself with somebody coming up.
It was a fluke. It was that marketing guy they met who sold all that. He was the one who turned. I mean, their work is good. Nothing against their work. But they would have been a couple of guys who had a popular indie comic.
They were in the right place at the right time.
Timing.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the. Yeah, I think it was all timing. Like
that is so. What Turtles became is so hitting the lottery that it'll never. What are the odds of it happening twice? So
this is the optimistic story I was talking about happening.
Right.
I mean, it has happened. It could happen. I mean, my crystal ball is not that crystal clear in the future.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the franchise, has kind of been a creative powerhouse somehow. But I don't know about Eastman. I mean, how do we judge them? They're such outliers.
Yeah, what have they done since?
Yeah. An issue of Conan. It was funny. Speaking of not being too expensive, I was King Size Conan came out this week, and I was looking at it, and it caught my eye. It was pretty good. I think Eastman had a story in it. Even I think it was Eastman, right? He's the one still doing work.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't $7, I would have picked it up. But I was like, I don't want to spend $7 on a Marvel Conan comic. Brian Boland, to me, is a guy he's an A-level artist, but not a creative powerhouse. Not an A-level creative powerhouse. So I'd make a distinction with him.
What about Richard Corbin?
Richard Corbin?
I think he's an entity all of his own. Honestly,
that's a tough one.
That's kind of why I brought it up. Yeah.
But do we really want to put him in? Oh, okay. Oh man. All right, we're getting ready to hit the 3-hour mark. Corbin, kind of like the industry caught up with him. We've had this talk about him. It's almost like the industry caught up with him, and who did things his way that nobody else did. You know what I mean?
I think we're going to have to put a special category in, like I said before, for indie creative powerhouse.
Yeah.
Because we're mostly when we started this conversation, we were talking about how creative powerhouses, I was saying, can't exist at Marvel and DC now. They won't come up. And I think becoming an indie creative powerhouse is so hard that they're much rarer. But I think Richard Corbin would fit that bill because he's had a 50-year career. Right. He created tons of stuff. He had influence, but he didn't really leave stuff behind for other people to do, like Marvel and DC creative powerhouses used to do.
Sure.
We got to rethink this topic. I think we ought to start a show out just like this, because we're getting names thrown out at us.
Right.
Now we're getting.
We haven't got one suggestion of a current name.
No,
of anybody from the last 10 years.
Oh boy, yeah, that's tough.
Because I think they've so made it impossible for creative powerhouses to exist at Marvel and DC that they just don't. They're extinct at Marvel and DC.
When it comes to the indie stuff, I would argue like he came this close was Eric Powell, but he couldn't. Eric Powell. If we had to mention a name, you know what I'm saying?
Terry Moore. Could we mention Terry Moore as a creative powerhouse? I don't. Well,
they're not Marvel, but like you said, they're not Marvel and DC. Now that we got the ball rolling, I can think of.
We can name more current indie comic names that we might think are creative powerhouses than DC. I mean, as a team, Brubaker and Phillips. Mm-hmm. Them together as one entity, we might consider a creative powerhouse.
And just for his body of work, he's been doing stuff so long, I'd have to say Stan Sakai.
Stan Sakai too. We might, and he's doing current work.
Yes.
Stuff other than Osagi.
And it's as good. His current work is as good as his work was 20-some years ago, and you can't say that for a lot of different artists.
But we could, but it's like we can't name a single Marvel, and if we do, maybe the writers, maybe.
Scott, this is just for you. This is just for you here.
Sergio,
Sergio's his own thing. Yeah.
Right. Well, one thing, he's such an outlier but he's done but he'd be an indie creative powerhouse.
That's what I was going to say. He's kind of like a Corman. You know what I mean? Like in that category. Not.
I mean, I think around the world, Sergio is probably more looked at as a cartoonist than as a quote unquote comic book artist.
Right. And you could technically say he's got EC roots. Going back to what we were saying. EC Comics roots. Mad Magazine.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. 2 degrees of separation, man.
I get it. Okay.
Yeah, and somebody the Pope got excited here. Some Pope here.
Pope. Yeah, he was. I think you could name. I mean, for a brief time. I mean, I haven't seen anything that was in a while, but he had like a burst period where he was creating stuff and was good and working at DC. And
I would put Mike Allred in the same category as Pope as far as that goes.
Yeah, maybe a sort of indie creative.
Yeah,
and like he would be a creative powerhouse for a short time.
Right.
Yeah, but think about how long Allred and Moore have been around. That's what'll blow your mind when you live back.
You just think about Strangers in Paradise, but you don't realize Strangers in Paradise has been around close to almost 30 years now.
Yeah, Sakai's probably been around like, I don't know. I don't want to talk. I mean,
he's been around since the 80s.
That's what I was going to say. He's only got 7 or 8 years on those guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I was trying to get at and making sure I had my dates right. 82. I think the first time I can think of something is 82.
One of the things this whole discussion makes me think of is I wish that there were certain artists that were just more prolific than they've turned out to be.
You mentioned Alex Ross here. I might put Alex Ross as an A-level creator, but I don't know that he's a creative powerhouse.
Well, I think
at least in style, if there had been a bunch of people wanting to do painted art, and it had become a regular thing.
There was for a while people copying him. Digital took over.
Yeah, it was a short bubble.
You can be one thing. I'll reiterate. You can be an A-level artist and not an A-level creative powerhouse. That's all. And I might put him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There was a short bubble of painted comics, but then you wanted to do a painted comic, you got Alex Ross, but it was not that much of a regular thing. Yeah, and it even got to a point where Ross was doing plotting in covers and nothing else.
There were a lot of other guys that were doing painted comics that weren't aping Alex Ross's style either. Like Scott
but his style became the style, is what it was.
At one point, it did.
For hyper realism in painted comics, but I mean, I don't think I'd make him a creative powerhouse in A-level, but especially since it depends on what you leave behind, and he left behind Earth X.
No, Kingdom Come and Marvels.
No, I mean in terms of stuff he actually wrote.
Yeah,
he was that Earth X stuff.
Yeah, he did
Earth X Justice.
He did a Superman special.
I'm just thinking of anything that people like. I wouldn't put him in the creative powerhouse category. If you want to make him an A-, I wouldn't argue that much.
What about somebody
Because
like what about somebody like Dave McKean?
Dave McKean.
Dave McKean is that guy that everybody wants to
I think
name drop.
Yeah, I think he's more like, I don't want to put him in the side with Corman. He's famous for so much other stuff besides comic book covers.
Yeah,
That's true.
he's more
Right.
of an illustrator. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
what I'm
would
trying to
agree.
get at.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah. I mean, that guy's such an art. John J. Muth, a little bit. He does so much stuff
Well, that's how I was
outside of
getting
comics.
back to
Right.
guys that did,
Yeah.
painted comics that weren't in Alex Ross style. You had a lot of them. You had John J. Muth. You had Pratt, Scott Hampton, Bo Hampton.
Guys, I do have to wind this up
Van
again.
Fleet.
Yeah,
Okay.
but when did Gru was at Eclipse? What?
Yeah, he
Gru-
first
Yeah,
appeared in the back of
Grew
Destroyer
started
Duck.
Pacific.
In '87?
And then he went to
Even before then.
Eclipse followed up what
I'm talking about the
Pacific
year.
was going to publish.
Yeah, but
It did.
1987.
Gru was around before '87.
Well, I mean, being at Eclipse or anything to do with Eclipse.
Yeah, it could be.
Possibly.
Eclipse picked them up after Pacific, right?
I'll look it up. up.
Is he getting Eclipse? Did he mean Eclipse or did he mean Epic?
I'm hoping he meant Epic. I'll give him a minute to let us know. That's what threw me off. I was like,
Professional.
I mean, he was at Marvel, Epic until the early
Well, he
90s.
started off at Pacific, then he went over
Yeah.
to Eclipse, and then it was Epic. It was Epic Marvel.
Image
After that,
and
it was
Dark Horse.
Image, Dark Horse.
I think
And Tommy Bagley says
One
not
other
going
one.
to see current creative powerhouses because the big two aren't doing new creations anymore, just rehashes and driven legacy. I think that's part of the corporate structure, though. They're doing that because of the tall corporate structure. Because the guys up here say we need to sell we need to sell backpacks to little girls. We can't sell them Spider-Man backpacks. Make a female Spider-Man. And that trickles down. So all the creative people are like, we need to create, character legacy. We need to create all these different characters to sell backpacks to all these different groups. That's part of the when they don't have that tall corporate structure, that type of stuff doesn't happen. So I think that's part of the corporate structure. That's one of the things.
They're still trying to get me to verify stuff.
Yeah.
Guys, we're hitting the 3-hour mark. I'd like to pick up
All
on
right.
this for our next show. This is awesome.
We'll pick up.
I'm going to change the name of this show because, only I hated Wonder Woman apparently at watching
The names have been changed to protect the guilty.
The Sal Buscema line.
Yeah. So anybody that's watching that's made it this far or popped in on this topic and stuff, have your choices and picks ready next week. Put them in the comments.
And let's see if we can think of anyone current.
Yeah.
Anyone we think we could possibly. Like I said, I think that once again, the start of this conversation was me thinking that Marvel and DC want to only have B+ level work in terms of creative powerhouses.
I'll tell you what, if
And
they're
the
going to
corporate
talk
structure keeps it that
right,
way.
if they bring up somebody current, they're going to have to tell us what they worked on. Okay?
Yeah, we're gonna have to look it up. I want to know who these guys are and read their stuff.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging in there. Hope you had a good
All right, have a good evening.
In some parts of the world, you got a few hours left to Christmas, so enjoy. Anybody got any last words they want to tell anybody? No? Okay.
Read more comics. We'll steal again
awkward-
from kayfabe.
Yeah, the awkward. No, don't do that.
The Queen's Wave.
The wave, the awkward goodbye. So be excellent to each other. Later, guys.